Hello, this is DrPaulCottrell, and I'm doing a new type of format here, so it took me a little while to set it up. There is two live streams that are taking place here. As you have been watching some of my previous episodes, you can see a video and then another video which I call the dashboard, and that has all the telemetry for the market. So this is a live stream, and I'm doing an experiment here. Hopefully it works out where you'll be able to see two different live streams. One is the one that you're seeing here on the big channel, and then on one of the smaller channels, you can actually see the dashboard. The dashboard will go live in about 3 minutes, and we'll see what happens here. Hopefully it works. I don't know, because this is the first time I'm doing this, so hopefully it works all to plan here. But this is a little bit of an experiment. So please, as you know, please help support my work by subscribing to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. I've been having problems with YouTube with many strikes, all right? If I talk anything about what might take place during the cold season, I get a strike on it, all right? I did a video about what was going on in California, dealing with a case that came up, right, during this season, and what I was concerned about, and I received a strike. So it's really important that you subscribe to all my channels so you can get my information. That's the 4 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble, right? I'm having problems with YouTube with strikes talking about certain types of diseases, all right? And, that's the world that we're living in terms of censorship. But I've been trying to give information to the public to the best that I can. Now, with that said, I'm going to go over the market. Hopefully someone can chime in and make sure that you're hearing me okay in the chat box. And, we'll hopefully, in 2 minutes, hopefully on the other channel, we're going to see the dashboard that pops up. Hopefully, we'll see what happens here. It should work. Again, this is an experiment, and this is the first time I've been doing this. So hopefully you can hear me. And with that said, let's go to Bloomberg, see what they're talking about here. The markets right now, the markets for the S&P 500, they're trading at 5,964. The Euro USD is trading at 1.04, so the dollar is strengthening, and oil is trading at $71 a barrel, so oil's trading up compared to yesterday. The dollar is strengthening, and the S&P 500 is trading below the 6,000. I have a target by year end for the S&P 500 to be trading anywhere from 5,800 to 60 to 60. All right, 5,800 to 6,000, maybe 6,100. But let's see what happens here. I want to play Bloomberg.
What's the role of Bitcoin ETFs been in the rise here of underlying Bitcoin?
Key thing, Paul, everything. So remember, that was the key thing when we launched that Bloomberg Galaxy Crypto Index in 2018. That was a primary goal. At some point, we're going to ETFs. The key thing flipped with Mr. Gaetz finally approving them, and now with our crypto-friendly president. It used to be very anti-crypto, but total inflows this year around almost 30 billion. I understand it's the greatest ever for any new ETFs. Total ETFs tracking. Bitcoin now is about 120 billion. Put that in context, a year ago it was only 10, so a lot of that's appreciation. And compared to gold's only 220 billion. So gold ETFs have been around for 20 years, and so Bitcoin's catching up really fast.
Well, we can get to Bitcoin and just we'll keep going with Bitcoin in a second, but to that point in gold, it's also had a tremendous rise. I mean, we're at the best week for gold prices since, October of 2023. If Bitcoin retrenches a bit here, like you're saying, can gold keep getting higher?
There you go, Alex. So you know, and I are both have commodities in our blood. We all both know the only commodity that really goes up over time is gold. So I like to point out
Who
today,
doesn't
as
want
of
gold in their
November.
blood, by the way? I mean, that's not.
Well, yeah, there you go. It's shiny and it's pretty, and you know, it's such a unique element. But it's on as of today, it's beating the S&P 500 total return on a 1, 2, and 3-year basis. So that's not a good sign for risk assets. And I point out this is very similar to 2007 when volatility was bottoming. So I love watching that gold Bitcoin ratio. I think Bitcoin's got to punch above it and stay above this 37 more gold ounces. Otherwise, it's good resistance. But the key thing to remember about gold is every day that goes by, we see geopolitical tensions escalating. Gold's favorable, and then you see issues what's happening lately. I pointed out gold's beating the stock market. That's not a good sign. And the
See, this is the
the
strange thing about what's going on with gold. All right, you have the dollar actually strengthening relative to the euro. All right, and it was trading at 1.05 euro to the dollar trade just a couple days ago, and now it's at 1.04. So 1.05 to 1.04. So dollar's strengthening. Now, usually when dollar strengthens, oil goes down, not up. So maybe tensions with Europe is why this is happening. Dollar will strengthen, euro will weaken, and then because of the tension, oil prices will go up. That could be the case. The VIX index, though, is at only 16, so that's low risk. So equities are moving up. Now, what is interesting, and I've been following it. Now, I don't trade Bitcoin or anything like that. I don't believe in the whole blockchain concept because I believe that it's a technology that people are paving the way for a surveillance. All right. Originally, when Bitcoin and blockchain was instituted, it basically was about, you don't need the Federal Reserve, you'll be away from the government, you'll be more autonomous. The reality of the situation is with blockchain, you can build metadata off of that coin for all transactions. Well, when we go to the digital dollar, they're going to use the blockchain backbone and track your currency transactions. Right, and I'm against the Federal Reserve, and I'm against the Treasury, I'm against the government knowing exactly how you're spending your money. I just don't think they need to have that level of granularity. So I've been against Bitcoin and blockchain because of this potential surveillance technology. Now, but people can make money on Bitcoin. It is a current. Another thing that I don't like about Bitcoin is that people think that you can be able to circumvent or nullify the Federal Reserve or central banks. That can't happen. I mean, they're not going to give up their power of creating the monetary base. So there's a fundamental problem in the economics of Bitcoin and blockchain and these cryptocurrencies. What can happen though is that it's like a virtual commodity, and that it's based on supply and demand, but it's in a virtual way. There is there's a supply issue because of the way the algorithm creates the coins, but there is this demand, this psychological need that they need it. But if everything goes to hell in a handbasket, trust me, it's not going to be Bitcoin that saves you. But if you have if you can take a lot of risk, if you like taking risk, you can trade Bitcoin different ways. You can buy Bitcoin, right? You can mint Bitcoin, which is a lot harder now than it was 10 years ago. Or you can look at these ETFs. Now, the ETFs that I've been looking at are the BITO, which is the long ProShare Bitcoin ETF, and the BITI, which is the ProShare short for Bitcoin. Now, BITO, longing Bitcoin, is at 26.58 right now. All right. So if you're going to be doing Bitcoin trading, just realize, don't think that Bitcoin is going to circumvent the government or the Federal Reserve. It's not. But there is going to be a herd effect within the market that elevates the price, even though there's no economics behind it. So if it does crash, it will crash hard. So, you know, you can make money on Bitcoin, but you can lose a lot too, because there's not a fundamental economic point to crypto. The Federal Reserve isn't going to abrogate their power. It's just not going to happen. That's just wishful thinking. Governments are going to relinquish their creation of currency. They will go digital dollar. They will go digital euro. They will go digital yen. And they're going to use this backbone, this blockchain backbone, to be able to track each transaction of that coin. And this is the reason why I was against crypto. I knew this was going to happen, and I knew this was going to happen back 10 years ago. So, or more than 10 years. Wait, was it 10? Yeah, about 10 years ago. I started talking about it, that I didn't like Bitcoin around 2014, 2015. So BITO is, going up. It's 0.74% up, and it's trading at 26.62. So if you're going to do the Bitcoin thing, take a look at the ETF and play that. You'll be able to make some money on doing it that way. But don't think that it's stable. It's stable. It's not stable. So it's a virtual commodity that has high risk. Just think of it that way. Okay. Don't know why the transmission isn't happening on the other channel. Let me figure that out. While we do that, let's go to Ukraine, and they're talking about this whole World War III with Zelensky and Putin.
Fox News alert now, the former commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian army making the grim declaration, World War III has officially begun as the country faces pressure from North Korea and Iran. Now Russia retaliating with new ballistic missiles after Biden gave Ukraine the green light to fire long-range attack missiles into Russia, and the UK did get their green light with their Storm Shadows. So let's bring retired four-star General Jack Keane. So you see the response from Putin, an experimental intermediate range missile. Why do you think Putin fired back like that? What's he worried about, General?
Yeah, well, first of all, Putin is really a master of psychological warfare, and in the Soviet Union and Russian playbooks, it always has been a major part of their conducting, kinetic warfare. And he's really quite good at it. I mean, look at it. He's forced the Biden administration never to give the Ukrainians what they wanted when they wanted it. And it protracted the war. So Putin keeps coming. And that's what this is all about. He wants to stop the use of ATACMS into Russia because he knows full well it already has. That can have some pretty significant impact. And certainly that's where he is, and that's where he's trying to get inside of Biden's head here and the Europeans' head. I think he cares less about Zelensky because he knows that Biden controls the switch here, and that's the reality of it. So in my mind, this is an experimental missile. I doubt they have any arsenal of it because it is experimental. They don't have much of it. And he's trying to use this as much leverage as he can to change the behavior of the United States and also Zelensky.
He says the missile goes 2.5 miles per second. The world's current air defense cannot stop it, according to what we have. So that's the message he sent. So the former military commander in Ukraine writes this. Soldiers from North Korea are standing in front of Ukraine. Let's be honest, the Iranian Shahidi missiles are killing civilians, drones. It is obvious that Ukraine already has too many enemies. We're not saying this is a world war. You feel like this is a world war beginning?
Well, I have some empathy for Zelensky, by the way, and for our audience. He used to be the chief of staff of all the forces in Ukraine. He's highly respected. But, you're sitting where he is, you can understand his feelings about this. I mean, he's fighting Russia, and now another nation state has come into the war to assist in the overthrow of Ukraine. And to truth be known, all the escalation talk has all been about the United States giving the green light to Ukraine to use ATACMS and moving in mines. The real escalation is there's another nation fighting on the ground inside of Ukraine, inside of Russia, attempting to push the Ukrainian forces out of it. That's significant. He looks to the Middle East and he sees Russia's ally also, who started a war there, Iran, and Iran is a tangible provider of assistance. So from his perspective, that indeed may be the case. From our perspective, no. But I do believe we are in a pre-war era. I've said that many times. China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are seriously cooperating together, and they clearly want to change the United States leadership in the world with like-minded democracies. That's why they've been so aggressive and so assertive these last three or 4 years. And German intelligence actually publicized recently. I was amazed that they put this in a public domain, and I was gratified that they do. And I suspect our intelligence agencies feel much the same, but I have no knowledge of that. The reality is that they said that Russia fully intends, after the Ukraine is finished with, to expand into Europe. And all the European nations know that, and certainly I think our country knows that. I know that as well. So yes, we're in a pre-war era. There's already 2 wars in our geographical key areas, the Middle East and Europe, and President Xi is threatening war, obviously, in the Indo-Pacific region. The incoming administration, given President Trump's strong views in the past and what he has done to confront adversaries, I believe all of these adversaries are reassessing as a result of the election that took place in the United States. And then I believe when President Trump comes forward and his team, and they can begin with policy formulation, that will be another moment for them to see if they have to change the path, the very aggressive path that they're on.
Right. They actually have that intent. I think you think the Russians have that intent, even if they don't have the army right now to do it. That's their goal. General Jack Keane, thanks so much. Appreciate it. And pick up the Institute Study Award. Get it daily, sometimes twice a day, in order to keep up with all the hot spots in the country. Thanks so much, General. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you and the team too. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to...
As Russia fired a new ballistic missile striking a military-industrial facility in a central Ukrainian city Thursday, not an intercontinental ballistic missile as was first thought. Hours after the strike, Russian President Vladimir Putin made a rare surprise TV appearance, clarifying it was a new intermediate-range ballistic missile that raced to its target at 10 times the speed of sound. That new missile, Putin says, is called Oreshnik, which means the hazel. An American official told Reuters that the U.S. was notified by Russia just before the strike that the weapon would be used. A lot to discuss, as always, so let's bring in Robert Moret, a professor of practice in the Public Administration and International Affairs Department at Syracuse University, also Deputy Director of the Institute for Security Policy and Law, and a retired Vice Admiral in the U.S. Navy. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us this morning.
Josh, good to be back with you.
All right, so first off, I do have to ask you kind of some definitions. Can you explain what an intercontinental ballistic missile is and how it differs from the type of missile that was actually fired here?
Josh, you know, ICBMs, as we call them, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and also SLBMs, which are intercontinental submarine-launched ballistic missiles, are a essential part of the arsenal for the United States and Russia, and also some other countries like France and the United Kingdom and so on. And they're usually used, they would be used, hopefully never, for nuclear strikes from intercontinental ranges. For example, the Minuteman ICBMs that we have in the United States, which is the basis for our arsenal, have a range. They can be fired from the continental United States to the Russian landmass. And the same for Russia with the missiles that they have, which are land-based, which can reach the United States. They're a key part of the arsenal, mostly for nuclear deterrent missions, but they also can be repurposed for use in conventional weapons, and then we saw that with the MRBM that was used by the Russians yesterday.
And I did want to ask, because we've seen the AP report as well as other news outlets that it appears Russia actually notified the U.S. right before this actual attack, the firing of that missile. So my question is, what does that say to you that Russia actually notified the U.S. ahead of time?
Josh, I'll make the point that that's a good sign. One of the things the United States and Russia have been doing throughout all of this, for example, since the full invasion of Ukraine 3 years ago, is to maintain open lines of communication. And that is really vital, especially when it comes to strategic matters. There have been a couple of other nuclear command and control exercises they've conducted just in the last year or two, and they've always notified us about those in advance. We did the same for them. So, to some degree, the communications with the countries that you have tensions with are more important than the ones that you're friends with. And the United States and Russia have always, and the Soviet Union in the old days, kept open lines of communications to avoid misunderstandings, which is important.
Putin seems to be issuing yet another warning to NATO. Does the U.S. or any of its NATO allies actually feel maybe intimidated in any way by Putin and by Russia?
Intimidated, I would say it varies pretty widely, for the NATO countries and the other ones that have strategic interaction with Russia. I think it varies pretty widely by country. I don't, intimidated is, I think this is, can increase tensions a little bit, not greatly, and we can talk about that in more detail, but some countries are less concerned about being intimidated by Russia and some more so. Some are in more vulnerable positions, like the Baltic states, for example, which border on Russia, but other ones are probably less concerned about it.
Is what's happening now, would you consider it a significant escalation in the war between Russia and Ukraine? We've heard so much over the past, I would say, week or so, with things kind of changing rapidly. So is this an example of what you might consider an escalation?
Josh, I think it could be interpreted that way. I wouldn't use the term escalation. I might use the term jockeying, and let me come back to that in a second. I do think it is a response to the unconstrained use that we have now for ATACMS missiles and also Storm Shadow missiles in the Kursk region of Russia, and allowing the Ukrainians to use them. I think what the Russian leadership did with the Oreshnik missile, the MRBM, is probably a response to that. I think what you're going to see in the next couple of months is a lot of, again, jockeying, because the time is right for negotiations, and some of that's related to the elections in the United States. Some of it is not. I think the Ukrainians are probably ready for negotiations more than they have at any point since this conflict started. And I think Russia's ready too. They're getting pretty tired of it. So kind of like at the end of any contest, if you will, there's jockeying. And so I would expect to see a lot more jockeying in the weeks and months ahead, leading up to some hopefully fruitful negotiations soon.
How involved is the U.S. in this war between Ukraine and Russia? We know the U.S. is supplying the Ukraine with money, with materials, things of that nature. How involved is the U.S.?
Josh, I would say we're very involved. However, I would caution against, there's a tendency for us that live in this country to think it's all about us. It's really not. There are a lot of other key players that are supporting Ukraine, and they have been fairly forthright throughout, especially just in the recent couple of months. Countries like Poland, the Baltic states, United Kingdom, our Canadian friends up north are really towing a hard line relative to Russia. So I think that we are certainly key in terms of the support that's been provided to Ukraine, but there are a lot of other actors in Western Europe, North America, and also in the Far East, like Japan and the Republic of Korea.
Do we know how Russia's weaponry, their weapon supply, compares to what Ukraine has right now?
Their weapons, certainly their overall strategic arsenal, is something that Ukraine doesn't have. However, for context, the Russians are continuing to take horrific losses on the battlefield. And a lot of this comes down to an infantry fight on the ground, infantry, artillery, mechanized infantry, and all the ICBMs that you may have in your arsenal really isn't going to help you out a whole lot with that. And kind of step back, this has been an incredible tragedy for the Russian people and also for the Russian armed forces, especially their army, which continues to take horrific losses, which are disproportionate and ones that they probably can't sustain for much longer.
Will the Trump administration mean any sort of changes to the war and the U.S. involvement? You talked a little bit about the situation there with the election. Is that going to change anything about the way that the U.S. is assisting and maybe the war itself?
It will. I mean, the new president-elect's team has already made some indications that things will change a little bit. But as I was saying earlier, I wouldn't want to read too much into this. For one reason in particular, the final decision on anything related to negotiations and a ceasefire of any type will be by the Ukrainians. And there'll be a lot of other actors in the room that will be engaged in those discussions other than the United States, and perhaps a broker. China's trying to do that, and some other countries, India and Brazil even. But I think it'll be a slight shift, but the kind of core issues that we'll have to deal with for the war in Ukraine and anything pertaining to a ceasefire negotiations, and especially a final point, strong security guarantees for the Ukrainians before they agree to a ceasefire. Those are still pretty knotty problems that any administration is going to have to deal with.
All right, as always, Robert Moret, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and breaking it all down. Anything else you want to add before I let you go?
Just make the point that as I mentioned earlier, the discussions with Russia are important. I think those will continue at a fairly vigorous level, and I hope they do so. But just reinforce one more time, the final decision on any end of this conflict, and a ceasefire, temporary or otherwise, is going to be up to the Ukrainians. And we need to acknowledge that, plus all the other actors in the room.
Okay, so it took a little while for me to figure it out, but so I'm doing the live broadcast on the big channel and also on my other channel, the next biggest channel on YouTube. And this is just an experiment, but you're seeing the live feed of the market, all right? So you're seeing a live feed with a larger picture of me and of the terminal here, but also on the other channel you're seeing the telemetry of the there's no audio on this side. Are you hearing the audio on? Are you hearing the live feed on the larger channel? Just chime in. Because if I turn audio on, it's going to be a lot of feedback. So, all right. So, all right. Okay. So there's no audio on this one. That's interesting. Why would there be no audio? Ah. Can you hear me now? I think so. You should be able to hear me now. Testing, testing. Okay, let's go to Bloomberg here. What are they talking about here? No, let's not go to Bloomberg. I want to go over Trump. Okay, all right. Sorry about that. I didn't hit a button that I should have hit. I'm doing an experiment here, so there should be audio on both channels now. I messed up on that. Sorry. All right, so let's go with Times.
Actually, I don't think anybody knows what Mr. Trump actually intends to do. I think it's I think he doesn't have to look up to Putin anymore. I mean, he's coming in at a level feeling very confident from the election, and he can see that the Russians are in big trouble.
Hello and welcome to Frontline for Times Radio with me, Kate Chabot, and we're catching up with senior retired American General, Lieutenant General Ben Hodges. Ben was Commander US Army Europe from 2014 to 2017. He's also commanded in Iraq and Afghanistan and is a regular commentator here on Frontline. We are talking on Thursday, the 21st of November, 5 o'clock London time. Ben, great to see you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Kate, and I always appreciate the privilege.
Ben, we're talking on a day where there's been a lot of confused reporting about exactly what Russia fired at Dnipro. At first, Kyiv's Air Force was and the newswires were going wild, speculating that it might have been an intercontinental ballistic missile, and President Zelensky had said there were the characteristics of one, and that would have been presumably very serious. It was the first time that was used in a war. What can you tell us about what President Putin has just been saying about this?
Well, I think this demonstrates that we should be not so quick to make assessments of what happened, why did it happen, what are the implications, because it's still developing, and what you just reported is different from what we all thought we knew even half an hour ago. So, the fact
So
is.
he's saying it's a mid-range ballistic missile.
Medium range, that's correct.
Medium range, sorry.
That's okay. So, I think most people who, when they hear ICBM, you automatically imagine the very worst nuclear holocaust, end of the world, World War III. This is significantly below that. Plus, it obviously did not have a nuclear warhead on it. So, the Ukrainians have been getting hit by nuclear capable weapons for the last almost 3 years with a much higher payload. So, they're pretty nonplussed about this. I think we see this as opportunity. Okay, this is a new weapon. The Patriot missile defense system. What have we learned from this particular Russian missile that we need to know that will help it be able to help Patriot shoot down the next one if there is another one? So I think the main thing is that we don't overreact.
And why do you think President Putin would come out and clarify this? Because I would have imagined it would suit him to sit back and enjoy all the confusion.
Well, again, he has a domestic audience as well, and there will probably be some people in Moscow that would be horrified. That something could go terribly wrong. Or maybe he's wanting to say, hey, look, I just took it up one step. I can still do more. I think we have to assume that anything that comes out of Moscow is generally said for a reason, but there's different audiences that could be targets. I don't know.
But you do regard it still as an escalation?
Well, it's an escalation in that it's look at the reaction it got. Now, I think what we need to do is avoid, I saw a Daily Mail headline already that said, launches nuclear capable weapon, as if like, oh my God, this is something new and horrible. And they've been using nuclear capable weapons from the very beginning. Every time they fire an Iskander, that's a new.
The worry I have, like I mentioned yesterday on my show, that the national security state could use this as a means to gain more power. Create some chaos, create a situation that maybe a tactical nuke is used by Russia in the European theater. And then what's going to happen is you're going to have the agencies, the NSA, the FBI, the CIA, the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, they're all going to be asking for more power. An emergency. We don't know if we have a lone wolf and, maybe, Russian infiltration and whatever. And it's just it's 9/11 emergency powers all over again for the national security state. Right? Think about it this way. You got Tulsi, all right, and they're already trying to smear her that she's some sort of Russian agent, that Nikki Haley has been saying on her podcast. Now let's just imagine that there's some sort of tactical nuke that goes off in Europe. Don't you think the Nikki Haleys of the world that are deep state administrative types are going to be asking for more power, and they're going to say, we can't have people like Tulsi because she could be a potential enemy. See how they can make this situation to try to hamstring Trump's administration and nominees and gain more power. The administrative state, the national security state, get more power because of a quote an emergency situation. It's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. So it's not just, well, did they use a missile system that could have a nuclear weapon on it? Well, you know what? We have missile systems in our nuclear subs, right? That could have conventional warfare, conventional warheads or nuclear warheads. So it's really, but I'm concerned. I'm concerned that the deep state is setting up something that will create emergency powers for them, as Trump is trying to take away powers from these agencies because they have grown too big. They're eroding constitutional freedoms. They are making mistakes and lead us into wars that we don't want to be in. Like Iraq, where's the weapons of mass destruction? But we had the CIA say that for sure they're there. This is crazy.
Very capable weapon, as are many other weapons that they've used. So that kind of language is, all it does is feed into the Kremlin narrative, and it gets people excited. But people like you that are much cooler about this and give and help explain to your audience, that's what we need.
Yeah, and Ben, I mean, I said the time and the day at the beginning of this interview because, news comes out all the time on this, and who knows what will have come out by the time this is actually being viewed by people, changing situation all the time. You said earlier, yeah, it's whatever it is, it's an escalation, and it is being regarded as a retaliation for the use of ATACMS and Storm Shadow missiles to strike targets inside Russia after restrictions were eased on their use. You've been pushing for this relentlessly. Does this go far enough for you?
You mean what the United States and UK have done?
Yeah, what is being allowed now?
No, not at all. These half measures only provoke the Russians, and that's why they did what they did to say, look, we're serious. You can't allow Ukraine to defend itself. I mean, that's what they're saying, that we are not allowed to help Ukraine defend itself. So to say, when the Russians will claim that they have no choice, that this ICBM was launched in retaliation for the U.S. and UK providing ATACMS and Storm Shadow, it is obviously the completely wrong way to frame what's happening here. They don't want Ukraine to be able to defend itself. They don't want us helping Ukraine defend itself. And I think what we should be doing is now doubling down and giving them everything they need and enable Ukraine to target the places from which these attacks are coming.
When you say everything they need to be able to attack the places from where they're coming, what more do you want Ukraine to have?
Well, first of all, remove the restrictions on where they can employ weapons that we give them. And then find more ATACMS, more Storm Shadow. This is something that should have been done a couple of years ago. Don't give them the chance to set the tone or steal the narrative about what's going on here. I remain 100% convinced that Russia is not going to use a nuclear weapon because there is no benefit for them to use a nuclear weapon. All they can keep doing is trying to kill innocent Ukrainians using kinetic weapons like this. Whereas if they use a nuclear weapon, there are zero upsides for them. And so I think that now is the time to be resolved, to show resolve, to stick with Ukraine. Ukrainians are not worried about this, by the way. I mean, there's all kinds of commentary coming out of Ukraine with their typical sort of humor. And I think that, we should not start to waver now just because Russia did this. That's exactly what they want.
And when you say that this new announcement, the allowing of ATACMS to be used within the Kursk area, I mean, I suppose we don't actually know what the real restrictions are because they haven't actually been announced, have they? But do you think, I mean, when you've seen what's happened so far, the targeting of the artillery depot in Bryansk and the targeting of the concentrations of North Korean and Russian troops in Kursk, and you're saying that irrespective of that, it's not allowing Ukraine to defend itself. What do you think the point is and what the gain is here? Is it military? Is it political? What is it?
So, of course, the benefit of long-range precision weapons is that Ukraine can use them to destroy headquarters, logistics, artillery, the things that are necessary to enable the mass, which is the Russians' only advantage, mass tens of thousands of troops. They have to have headquarters, artillery, and the logistics, ammunition for that artillery in order to help this massed infantry move forward. So this is why precision is so important, and the ability to reach a place like this ammunition storage site in Bryansk, or apparently headquarters that was hit yesterday by several storm shadows. These are exactly the kind of targets that Ukraine needs to be able to hit to defend what they have achieved in the Kursk bridgehead. Now, the other things that they would want to hit, of course, and which I think we should be helping them hit, are the sites from which these air raids originate, whether they're missiles or aircraft carrying missiles or drone strikes. Their point of origin needs to be hit. In other words, as General Breedlove says, it's better to kill the archer than try to intercept all the arrows.
And it
Right,
is
before-
being framed by some.
Before she goes to her next question, I just want to say that the equity market right now is trading at 59.50, so that's the S&P 500. Oil is trading below $71 a barrel at 70.75, and the dollar continues to strengthen compared to the euro, and that trade, that euro to USD pair is trading at 1.039. So dollar strengthening, there is a strengthening of oil, and the equity market, right now is trading at 59.52. Again, I still have a target of 5,800 or 6,000 for the S&P 500 by year end. VIX is trading at 1644. So the ones that are, I'm doing an experiment here, this is all live, so the ones that are on the larger channel see just a video. The ones on the other channel on YouTube can see the dashboard. It's all live. Previous recordings, it was a morning recording that I posted later. So this is an experiment. I apologize if there's some hiccups to it. The ones that are watching the dashboard, someone said that it was hard to hear. Hopefully you can hear me better. Just chime in just to test the audio, because again, this is a whole new setup, and I'm still tweaking it. Maybe I have to speak a little louder, I'm not sure. So just chime in the chat box just to make sure that you can hear me for the ones that are watching the dashboard version. Okay, with that, I'm gonna go and continue on with Times Radio.
Commentators, as a move by President Biden in the last weeks of his presidency to do something, to be seen to do something, perhaps also to hand something for when the new Trump presidency takes over that could potentially be used in any kind of negotiations as some kind of leverage. Do you see it that way at all?
I think there's two or three things that are at play here. I have been frustrated all along, as have many others, that the administration did not do more sooner to help Ukraine to be more decisive instead of this very, very gradual approach, sometimes referred to as escalation management. And look where we are. All it has done is actually prolong the conflict. So I think now that President Biden is looking for an opportunity to try to do as much as he can in the last 2 months to clear the decks of everything that's already been approved, get that out, get that delivered, and policies such as allowing Ukraine to be able to defend themselves more effectively. And I do see this as basically a gift from the Biden administration to the incoming Trump administration, because that means when President Trump shows up, capabilities will be at a higher level than they have been. And then it's up to Mr. Trump. He can change it back, he could cancel it, or he can leave it in place, because actually he will have enormous leverage over Vladimir Putin from day one. I mean, he can say, hey, look, we're gonna stop, we're gonna block your ability to ship oil to China and India, which is what pays for Russia's war machine. We haven't done that yet. Or he can say, I'm gonna give the Ukrainians all the ATACMS that we have, or he can do a lot of things if he wants to. So I don't think anybody knows what Mr. Trump actually intends to do. I think it's, I think he doesn't have to look up to Putin anymore. I mean, he's coming in at a level, feeling very confident from the election, and he can see that the Russians are in big trouble.
And what do you think is at stake in Kursk? Will the battle there and whoever holds it by Christmas be critical for any negotiations that take place in 2025?
Well, for sure, this is something, I think one of the objectives of the Kursk counteroffensive was to create a dilemma for the Kremlin. That to have Ukrainian soldiers occupying a part of Russian territory, especially a part that's named Kursk, is significant because they can't just ignore it. And I think it's going to end up being a place where a lot of Russian troops and North Korean troops end up getting killed. Perhaps they'll eventually eliminate this bridgehead at some point. The deadline has already been missed twice, and Putin established a third deadline, I think January 20th, which is the U.S. inauguration, to have it done by then. I imagine the Ukrainians will hold on to it as long as they can, as long as it's worth it for the purpose of having something in hand when it does come down to negotiating time, if we're headed there.
We hope you're enjoying today's episode of Frontline. Don't forget you can also now listen to Frontline in podcast form. Just search for The World in 10 from wherever you get your podcasts, where you can also hear daily analysis of the biggest stories relating to war and defence. And we'll put a link to The World in 10 in the description below.
Just want to ask you about Vladimir Putin's signing off of his new nuclear doctrine.
Okay, before we go with that, let me, this is disorganized today because this is a big experiment to do this dual live thing. Please go to my store and help support my work, help support your health. And I offer some great products to do that. We're in the cold season and it's really important to start stocking up on structural nanosilver drops. So get a couple bags for your household. I suspect that there may be an increase in cases in December or January. I don't want to get into too much detail, but I just think that there will be additional cases. Right now, compared to last year, influenza and our wonderful 2020 crisis is less this year compared to last year, all right? But I suspect that there's going to be a blip up of cases. So at work, at school, in your home, you're probably going to start seeing people getting sick. It's better to prepare now before that happens, all right? But I think in December, January, we may see a pulse of an increase, but nothing major, nothing where you got to be scared of, but just be prepared, all right? And to be prepared, you can get these structural nanosilver drops. I have it in honey and lemon. I have it in cherry and in blueberry. So just get a couple bags for your household. The moment you have that irritation, take it right away. At work, at school, at home, whatever. The whole point is to take it right when you start having that irritation. And you need to do that so you mitigate further infection. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get a couple bags for your household. It's really important.
The threshold for a nuclear attack by Moscow, which coincided with the use of the ATACMS in Russia. I think I know what you're going to say about it. You can say it anyway, but I'm really interested to know whether that kind of rhetoric, if you take it as, saber rattling to push back and scare countries from supporting Ukraine more, for example, perhaps Germany, and be more cautious. I mean, how is that going to pan out? First of all, do you accept that? And is it having an effect? And then secondly, when Donald Trump comes in as president, do you think we're still going to hear that same kind of rhetoric?
Well, these are great questions. First of all, the concept of nuclear doctrine is important because it drives training, it drives strategic messaging, it drives weapons and equipment procurement and development. And Putin, even though he is a total autocrat, he also has a domestic audience. And there are a lot of people in Moscow that were clamoring for do more, lower the threshold, show that we're tough. So he actually, I think, part of this is aimed at that domestic audience to show that he still is the tough guy. I'm very interested of what the relationship will be between him and President Trump after January the 20th. Putin has actually been pretty quiet. Unlike many other world leaders, he's stayed off the net. I think he's confused or trying to figure out what a Trump administration will be like, just like we all are, looking at the people that are being nominated for various positions, and trying to look at who's the number 2 person in all those cabinet posts that will really be the ones driving policy, in my view. So I think he's probably having to deal with the uncertainty of Donald Trump right now.
In terms of the appointments that we know that his choices so far, Donald Trump as president, or president-elect for now, what can you read into how policy will be adapted or pursued or developed for Ukraine?
Well, of course, I have my great hope for the administration actually lies in the Congress. The senior Republican leadership is by and large pro-Ukraine, pro-NATO, pro-transatlantic. And I think that they will be in a place that they could actually moderate or influence U.S. policy towards Ukraine, U.S. policy towards Russia. That's certainly what I am anticipating. I think they'll be able to convey that, look, don't turn your back on Ukraine. This is important for us. It affects our economy. It affects how China views our will. All of these things. So that's what I'm counting on, is the Congress to play a role. Now, obviously, from the campaign, Vice President-elect Gaetz was a very, very harsh critic of Ukraine. Elon Musk, other people that are advisors or friends of the president also were that. But the Secretary of State nominee, Senator Rubio, is very pro-Ukrainian. I think that Congresswoman Stefanik, who will be the U.S. ambassador to the UN, reasonable. So I'm less worried there. What's going to be interesting to see is when these nominees do go before the Senate for confirmation hearings. And of course, the administration would like to avoid some of that. But this is going to be a test for the Senate to fulfill their constitutional duty, or do they forfeit power?
And of course, the election of Donald Trump has raised questions in Europe as to how it will continue to support Ukraine should the US want to stop doing so. Which European leaders do you think, and are you looking to be the most persuasive towards the president when he comes into his job?
I think that there's kind of a shift of the center of gravity of security and defense in Europe that's moving towards the east. And it would be leaders like Alex Stubb from Finland, Donald Tusk from Poland. I think Prime Minister Meloni from Italy is a real force. And I believe that after the elections in Germany in February, we're going to see Friedrich Merz as the new Bundeskanzler. I think he will change the trajectory.
I want to just pause what he's saying and go in. So I want to pause what he's saying and go to Bloomberg. They're talking about the holiday movie season starting to may slow. So
especially the cable networks, both of them getting about 50 to 60% of revenues from those cable TV networks. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly what happens, but there's absolutely no denying that that business is extremely challenged. We're seeing about 8 to 9% of yearly TV subscriber losses. So something has to be done, and the general expectation is that there is going to be quite a bit of M&A activity on the street, considering especially this Comcast spinoff.
Maybe I'll dust off my Rolodex and get back in the game.
Yeah, and you think it also gets better because of a different administration, so it's
Yeah.
easier to kind of push
I think
through.
so from a regulatory perspective, because that's the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, as well as the other just competitive folks like FTC and DOJ. Geetha Ranganathan, thank you so much. We appreciate it. As always, Geetha is our go-to voice, one of the leading media research analysts on Wall Street, talking about gonna be some pretty good movies coming up if you're into that thing.
I'm into that thing.
Yeah, I think
Well,
so.
because in my local theater, they have like really amazing food.
Ah,
And they do like table service to your seat.
nice.
And they do like special drinks, like based on the shows. Like it's super fun.
And that'll cost you per ticket?
Well, I just bought 3 tickets from around at $2 for $56.
Okay, I'll leave it
And it's not, you know.
Freeze.
It's a whole thing would be like
It's a whole thing.
like $130 for 3 people to have dinner and have a movie.
Okay, all right, that's how you roll,
And some
bro.
drinks. This is Woodward.
All right, before we go back to Times Radio, please go to my store and help support my work and your health by getting the great structural nano silver soaps that I have. I have oatmeal spice, I also have charcoal tea tree, and peppermint and lemongrass. So please go to my store, get the structural nano silver soaps. They're very high quality, way better than the other stuff that's out there at the grocery store by Procter & Gamble or Unilever. So please, help support my work and your health by getting the structural nano silver soaps. I apologize for, this chaotic thing that's going on. But this is an experiment to do 2 streaming live different formats. And hopefully it's turning out okay.
It's sort of that tier of leaders that if they come together could probably make a compelling case to a Trump administration that, look, don't turn your back on us. We still need an American nuclear deterrent, particularly since none of those 4 countries have nuclear weapons, unlike UK and France. But they all or 3 of the 4 are investing heavily in defense. Italy will soon be one of the biggest spenders on the continent. So they could compel or convey to the president, don't turn your back on us, but we will pick up a lot of the slack on Ukraine, but we still need American leadership. Obviously, Prime Minister Starmer is always going to have will be at the front of the line or close to the front of the line when it comes to people that the Americans turn to. But I have to say, he doesn't come across as someone that could lead the rest of Europe, perhaps. And President Macron also seems to be in some his own domestic challenges. And so that's why I feel like the center of gravity is shifted to the east.
And all of this, and you have said so before, that China is watching, you've made that point often, watching the support the West gives to Ukraine, the extent to how it pushes back against Russian aggression. It will also be interested in the terms of any negotiations that it's agreed to end the war. At this stage, what do you think its assessment is?
At this stage, I think China believes that we don't have the political will to decisively stop Russia. That we have failed to deter Russia from continuous airspace violations, sabotage of cables, disinformation, just this constant churn of bad behavior by the Russians, and all we've done is shake our fist at it. We've done nothing to inflict real pain. We've done nothing to stop Russia from exporting oil and gas to China and India. And so I think that the Chinese must see that we still don't have the political will to do what's necessary to help Ukraine win, to defend sovereignty, to defend freedom of navigation, to defend international law. And I think the Chinese could draw the conclusion that we won't have that will in the Indo-Pacific region either, where it's much more difficult to actually do anything.
And since you mentioned undersea cables, the suspicion has fallen on a Chinese ship in the area of the Baltic Sea when undersea internet cables were damaged a couple of days ago. Not the first time that the Baltic's infrastructure has been damaged. It happened in 2022 with the destruction of the 3 Nord Stream pipelines between Russia and Germany. It's really important, though, isn't it, to find out who or what was responsible for these kind of incidents, because, otherwise there's never any accountability, there's plausible deniability, and I'm just wondering, how that is possible and how you do it. You can point the finger with credibility when you've got one part of the world saying black is white and the other side saying white is black.
Well, there are other incidents where the cable between mainland Norway and Svalbard Island was also cut. I mean, these things are happening so often. I was speaking to officers earlier today from Scandinavian countries, and they are very familiar with the Russian tactic of having a submarine that moves underneath a ship to avoid detection, and they get out there, and we know the Russians have the capability to deploy even smaller submarines to cut cables, to do this kind of thing. And so the awareness is greater, and they're investing time and resources into protecting this underwater infrastructure, but it's very difficult. And I think that what we're going to see is increased cooperation among the Baltic nations. But I think we need to be more. We need to be tougher in our accusation. This is not a criminal court where you've got to have incontrovertible evidence that it was Russia or that it was China. The fact is, one of those two was associated with every one of these things. Now, I was impressed. Reports yesterday that the Danish Navy went out and approached the Chinese ship. I heard today, I can't confirm it, that the Danish Navy actually boarded this ship. This is what we need, is for allies in the region to be willing to take those kinds of steps, to hold them accountable. We may get it wrong a couple of times, so what? The fact is, they need to, right now, they don't fear that they'll ever be caught.
Just really interested to get your perspective on the US agreement to supply anti-personnel landmines to Ukraine, which could slow Russia's advances in the east of Ukraine. It has been heavily criticised by humanitarian organisations. They say they were banned in 1997 by the Mine Ban Treaty. Why can they, and are they being offered now?
Well, I think that you have to look at the situation. Ukraine is fighting for its life. It has a very long border with an enemy that has tens of thousands of troops and is seemingly willing to keep expending those troops, trying to overwhelm Ukrainian defenders. I think this is entirely a legitimate use of a weapon to defend themselves against Russia. And I think that the biggest concern about various types of landmines is that if they stay in the ground forever, or if there's a high dud rate or something like that, that you end up creating a real safety hazard for farmers, for children. All true. It's absolutely true. There is a danger to that. There's no denying that. I would say that what has been provided are a type of capability that has a very low dud rate. It is not the worst case, but I can feel, even as I'm trying to explain it, people will be going like, what? So there's no denying that there will be a risk. But at this point, this is where you say that the greater importance is helping Ukraine defend itself against Russia and its unprovoked attack.
And it's 1,000 days since February 24th, 2022.
Before I have her continue on, I have activated the spaces on X, so you can call in live and tell me what you think is going on in Ukraine, or with the economy, or with Trump and the nominations, or Congress. All right. So to do that, go to X, go to my feed, and you'll be able to see it's called Telemetry Episode 29 live stream call in. So you can call in if you want, and give me your take on what's going on in the world. And the reason why I'm doing this is I want to do this live, capture what the news is, give you a little bit of my take on it, try to, explain on how to improve your health, but also to get your feedback on the news instead of me just, pontificating about it. It's important to get your opinion. But to do that, to do the call-in, go to X on my channel there, my feed, and follow the spaces that I just activated. It's Telemetry, episode 29, live stream call-in. And just raise your hand and, I'll let you on.
This week. It was an opportunity to reflect on the devastation and suffering that's been caused in all of those days. 1 million people have been killed and wounded. And I was listening to a young woman the other day on the streets of Kyiv, and putting it bluntly, just saying that everybody knows somebody who's been killed or who's been maimed by this war. And you don't just get, you can't get it unless you're actually living through this. And in Russia itself, the Times newspaper, it's reporting that, Russians are turning to alcohol and that they've had a record 1.84 billion litres of vodka being sold between January and October this year. Now, you can say that they're not comparable, those kinds of suffering, but it does look like everybody is losing right now.
Well, yes, in a way, I can see why you would say it like that, but I would not say the Russians are turning to alcohol. I mean, they're pretty famous for that having been a part of their lifestyle and culture for a long time. Nonetheless, the biggest loser will be the country that fails to defend itself, and for us who don't help Ukraine defend themselves. This war started 100% because Russia invaded it. This was unprovoked. And I think, we have to think about what really is important for us. If Ukraine fails, there will be millions more Ukrainian refugees going into Western Europe. If Ukraine fails, the continued disruption of grain and oil and gas shipments will continue to affect prices in UK, in the US, and across Europe. If Ukraine fails, you could end up in a situation where NATO countries come face to face with Russia, which means a broader war. And if Ukraine fails, it will be because we allowed it to fail. And the Chinese will say, okay, the West does not have the political will to defend what it claims is so important.
And
I think that's a good point, that this might be a canary in the coal mine from the Chinese perspective with Taiwan. That if the United States doesn't continue on the war effort and fight Russia, then China has more probability of being able to invade Taiwan, and the United States won't do anything. I personally have the feeling that the United States is more concerned about naval freedom of navigation than really what's going on in Ukraine. So whatever happens in the Pacific theater, I think we're going to be a little bit more steadfast in protecting Taiwan. That's my estimation. That's also my hope, because I think that if we do not have a strong footing in the Asian theater, the Pacific theater, that we're going to lose our hegemonic power and lose freedom of navigation in that region. That's huge in terms of the global economy. Not so much with Ukraine and Russia. All right. But I could be wrong. But I have a feeling that the United States would be a little bit more steadfast with the Pacific theater. My problem is that I'm not a big fan of supporting the Ukrainian war. I think we have spent way too much money. We should stop trying to grow NATO and try to de-escalate the issue in that region. I feel as though our international foreign policy has been a big cause of this, going all the way back to the fall of the Berlin Wall and the mismanagement of the post-Cold War. The United States mismanaged it. We became hubris, unfortunately, and now we're living through it. Now, if you want to share your opinion on that, please go to X on Spaces. The Space live stream is Telemetry episode 29 live stream call in. You can call in and give me your opinion on it. But before we go back and finish what he's saying about Ukraine, please help support my work and help support your health by getting the deodorants that I have on my store. I partnered up with Rainbow Herbals, and we've developed these deodorants that are very high quality and dual purpose. They're for males and females. The deodorant here is the citrus version, and I also have one in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. These are very high quality. They're dual purpose. They help to detoxify your body, but also you use them as a deodorant, all right? In addition, it's for males and females. These are made from essential oils from the Himalayas. Very high quality ingredients in these bars. You won't be able to find something like this, somewhere in the store, in your regular store. So please go to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos, and get a couple bars for your household. Help support the channel, help support your health. It's a win-win. These are very high quality. Please go to my store and get the deodorants.
Point that the real date is more than 6,600 days since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014 with the annexation of Crimea. That was when you were Commander US Army Europe. Did you ever foresee at that moment the potential for this to become what it looks like it is today? It's an era-defining conflict.
Well, of course, I did get called out after I tweeted that number that my math was off by a couple of thousand days, which is true. But yes, Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014, and I think it's important that we date the beginning of this conflict from 2014 because Ukraine has been fighting against Russian forces since that time. And
has World War I ever finished? Probably not. Does any wars really finish? Historians like to delineate, have a nice delineation, one era to another era. The war ended here, the war started here. But do they really end and start on those dates? Probably not. I would say you can roll this thing all the way back to the fall of the Berlin Wall. And the negotiations between the Soviet Union, or the crumbling of the Soviet Union, and the United States. And the understanding, the intellectual understanding that NATO was not going to expand to the east. But it did. So was that negotiation by Gorbachev and Bush Sr. that starting point of where we're at today? I would say yes. So it wasn't 2014. It was the fall of the Berlin Wall.
The large-scale invasion, of course, is when it got to such high intensity, began in February 22. So thank you for reminding that this war has been going on quite a long time. I did not, I couldn't tell or didn't realize it would be going on 10 years later when it started in 2014. I was pretty sure that the Russians were never ever going to live up to any agreement under the Minsk process. I mean, we saw that. We had American, British, Canadian troops that were in Ukraine helping to train Ukrainians beginning back as early as, I think, 2015. So we were watching this. In fact, we even changed our own training because we saw what the Ukrainians were dealing with against the Russians. So it caused us to change how we approach war fighting and to help kind of shake us out of our counterterrorism mindset. But I think I did not anticipate the ferocity of the air and missile strikes against civilian targets that we have seen.
You're obviously, as I said at the beginning, you're retired from your post now, retired general. What keeps you supporting Ukraine? What motivates you to be a strong advocate?
Well, obviously, their story, what we see of Ukrainians, the resilience of the population, their determination, that's inspiring. But what keeps me focused on it is what I had said earlier about why this is important for us, why this is important for the United States, for the UK, for the rest of Europe. The refugees that will come pouring in and will affect the European economies, the potential for a war spreading to include NATO countries, which means all of us will then be in it, the perception by China, all of these things have long-term ramifications for our security and our prosperity. Ukraine is bearing the brunt of this, and all we have to do is decide we want them to be successful. And I think that's what we ought to be doing.
Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, thank you so much for talking to us.
I think that was a nice long form of someone trying to articulate their point. Some of it I disagree with, but I think that was a good, discussion. I want to go to the whole Matt Gaetz thing and Pam Bondi, being elevated as the nominee for the Attorney General. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support my work and help support your health by getting the multivitamin that I have here. This is an easy to digest multivitamin, and multivitamins are very important as cofactors for enzymatic activity. That basically means that with, good concentrations of multivitamins, you're gonna have good cellular processes to take place. That means that you're gonna get healthier, all right? You should be taking a multivitamin every day and add that to your stack. This is a very easy to digest multivitamin. You can go to the store and take a look at the profile. It'll take me forever to go over each one of these vitamins. But the point here is go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take this easy to digest multivitamin and improve your health. Follow my protocol. Slow down the aging process. Improve your immune system. Improve your endocrine system. You can do this, all right? You can take charge of your health, all right? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And these are things that I do on a regular basis. And it's also, that learning process going all the way from when I was 16 years old to, the ripe old age of 52. So, you can learn a lot from what I've been doing. In addition, I also have, if I can find it, probiotics. Probiotics are really important. I have two types. I have a powdered version, which I take with my lunch. There's a little scooper, you just mix it with your food, or you can mix it with filtered water. And a VeggieCap version. This VeggieCap version, is easy to take, to work or whatever, and you don't have to mix it with food or with water. But I have different customers, and they prefer different ways of using it. So get the probiotic powdered version or the VeggieCap version. But they're both very high quality, and it's important to take probiotics. Why? You need probiotics to reset your gut biome so it reduces inflammation in your gut. And by reducing inflammation in your gut, you're reducing the chances of leaky gut syndrome. You're reducing chances of creating an environment where your mucosal lining is smaller, shorter. And when you have a short mucosal lining in your gut, you can get sick quicker. And mutations can happen in the crypt in your gut when there's high inflammation and your mucosal lining is poor. So having a good gut biome is going to protect your gut. It's going to improve your metabolism and improve the communication between your gut and your liver. Your liver detoxifies your body, and it also helps with metabolism. And it creates lots of different chemicals and that your body needs. In addition, your gut also communicates with your brain. And depression can be associated with poor gut health. Mental acuity can go down if you have poor gut health. So you want to, gut health is a major point where you need to boost and improve, and you'll start noticing your hair's better, your skin, your nails, your eyesight, your mental acuity, your metabolism. It starts in the gut. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the powdered probiotic or the VeggieCap version. Take it every day, and you're gonna start noticing a difference. But when you take other stuff with this, called a stack, and you follow my anti-aging protocol and longevity protocols, you're gonna start noticing your energy levels are getting better, you're thinking faster, you're soaking up free radicals better, your metabolism is better, you have more lean muscle, and what's gonna happen is that you're aging slower. But it takes some time and some diligence, but it can be done. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, with that said, let's see what CNN has to say about Pam Bondi.
Mushrooms make you feel better.
Former personal attorney previously to Donald Trump, Jim Trusty, is here. And Jim, what do you make of what Ellie just brought up there? I mean, you obviously represented Trump previously, but you also ran the Justice Department's organized crime section at one point. Do you think having multiple people who previously represented Trump at the top layers of the Justice Department is an issue?
Not particularly. I mean, look, there's a couple of things. The Attorney General position, which I view as a very, very important position for the country, you know, from being around criminal justice for 35 years, from being at the department for 17, you know, I view it as a critically important job where there's a great need for independence and competence. But historically, you had a president that picked his brother. More recently, you had a president whose AG said, I'm his wingman. So this idea that they're going to be thoroughly, perfectly independent is always a little bit of a myth. You do want a strong personality, somebody that will stand up for what's right. I'll tell you, my criteria, though, drifts from where you guys are. What I would say is, number one, the president clearly wants somebody who's willing to throw a grenade under the tent. You know, somebody who's going to blow up the politicized culture. And I'll tell you, I think that's right. I think they need someone who's going to go in and
That's exactly what we need, and that is exactly what Trump wants to do. He wants to put people in these positions to restructure the DOJ, to restructure the national security state, to restructure the Pentagon, restructure these agencies, because they've been growing. They just, anyone that's been in corporate America, you know, going all the way back to the 80s, have probably, you know, saw many restructurings in your life, right? With corporate restructuring, layoffs, and the company grows and then shrinks, and the industry grows and shrinks, right? Same thing with the government. Why does the government keep on just growing? It needs to be restructured. It's time for MBAs to get in there and start, you know, fixing stuff, make it more efficient, don't have as many people wastefully employed in these agencies, and we're going to have a more efficient government. It's going to cost less, and it's going to do more for the people. But what's happening is that you have individuals that are part of this national security state that's been inculcated throughout their whole career on what to believe when they go to Kennedy School at Harvard, all right? They're told what to believe, and then they get into the Pentagon, and, you know, they have a certain mindset. You know, the bear is always bad, right? And we have problems internationally because of it. But these individuals that are being brought up in these schools, in poli-sci, in elite schools, they get into government, they get into politics, they become lawyers, and what happens is that they just keep on, you know, trying to have those agencies more powerful, and emergencies happen like 9/11 or the crisis in 2020, and there's this agency overreach. And it never goes back. Have we gone back to a pre-9/11 day? No, we haven't. Why? Didn't we kill the bad guys in the Middle East? Oh, we didn't. We didn't get the job done. Oh, why, General? Well, see, all the risk is socialized, right, with these agencies. All the risk is socialized. You know, that the individual, the society has to pay for their mistakes. But when they really lose the war, when the general loses the war, he doesn't get court-martialed. There's no there's no clawback on his pension. He doesn't get demoted. He may get fired by the president, but that doesn't happen that often, but it could happen. But what happens is they go through the revolving door, because all they care about is making sure that they're trying to shepherd a defense package that will allow them to work on a board or be a consultant and make tons of money after they retire as a general. We need to stop that. But it's happening at the FDA. It's happening at the CDC too. And now we wonder why things are so bad, why the children are sick, why we have, negative adverse reactions to certain types of therapeutics. Because people are on the take. Why our military can't win a fucking war? Because our military, our generals are on the take. The regular soldier, they're doing their job. They're doing what they're told. They're trying to win the war. They're trying to do the right thing. But their generals, they don't care. They don't care. Do they really care about, the regular soldier that's coming home and they're having a problem, socially, or getting a job, or finding a home, or having, problems? No, they don't really care. The general cares about that golden parachute that he's going to get when he retires. And they got all those medals, all those participation medals as a general. But a lot of those medals, a lot of those war medals, are when they were in command and they lost a war. Those are the facts. Now, I'm not anti-military. By far, I'm not. I support the military. I believe that our armed service men and women need to be held in esteem. That means, forever, to make sure that their health care is provided for free, because they serve their country, especially if they've been wounded. But we don't have that. We don't have that. We got generals that make sure that they get on Raytheon boards. We got generals that make sure that they pontificate on CNN. The system's broken. So we need people to come in and fix it. What's happening is that CNN is aligned with the national security state, because it's part of the Smith modernization to try to get you to think a certain way, called manufactured consensus. And they want you to think that Trump's evil, anyone he brings in that may be a loyalist is evil, and that the status quo should continue. But it's quite the opposite. We need people that are hell-bent on restructuring the national security state, because DrPaulCottrell wants America to go to a pre-9/11 day. I want to see our agencies not have as much power as it has. And I would say that most Americans, if they really think about this, agree with me.
Me hear about all the misconduct that was affiliated with the Trump investigation and others to find out if heads should roll. But beyond that, every morning, and Ellie knows this too, every morning like 7:30, the Attorney General gets a briefing where they're being asked questions about, what do we do on this terrorism case? Do we have enough to pull the trigger? Or what about this counter-espionage? Or what about this senator? And those are really nuanced, difficult questions of procedure and judgment. And I like the thought of someone with some prosecutorial experience. And Bondi may not have had that level, that exact altitude, but I think she's pretty well equipped to do the daily job that's so important, and that's frankly much more important than kind of bald notions of political allegiance.
So you do think Pam Bondi is a good choice for this role?
Look, I think, for me, and maybe it's a function of me being old, I value experience. I like people that have some inside experience. I know you don't want somebody from the swamp to manage the swamp, but I like the fact that she's got serious prosecutorial experience. She's obviously a political figure and a media figure too. But, 20 years in a large state handling an office with significant cases and being in the trenches trying cases, those are good signs from my perspective.
Can whoever whatever Trump puts in at the DOJ, I mean, it's very clear, as you just pointed there, about someone who would go in and throw a grenade into the department. Can you do that though, and do the actual work of the Justice Department, which is maintaining that layer of independence that has existed, but also you're managing 93 U.S. attorneys, the FBI, the DEA, ATF. It's a lot of employees. Can you do? I mean, I think that's the question of what.
I'll tell you, these people are so freaking stupid at CNN. When you are a high-level manager, all right? I worked in corporate, all right? I worked for big companies, all right? When you're a high-level manager, what happens is that you have other managers under you. So, yes, in theory, the CEO may have thousands of employees under them, all right? But they don't manage 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 employees. It's called direct reports. And the number of direct reports that a CEO has is much smaller, because that's how you manage an organization. You delegate. If you were managing direct reports of 20,000 people, your company would implode. Not only that, you'd go crazy. So you have a CEO, right? And then you have, other C-suite individuals like CFO and COO and all that. And then they have department directors and associate directors and mid-level managers all the way down to, the shop guy, right? But it's all about direct reports. And as long as you know how to set the goal of the organization, what the mission is, what's the strategic plan, you set the organizational structure, and you monitor monthly, weekly, daily, whatever, the performance of your direct reports, and they do the same under them, then your company will be efficient. You don't manage 20,000 people. You manage direct reports, and those direct reports have direct reports, and so on and so on. I am so tired of dealing with stupid people.
What the DOJ requires in a leader.
Yeah, look, it's a tough balance. I think typically the Deputy Attorney General is the guy that's really, or gal, that's more involved in steering this giant aircraft carrier full of personnel. And generally when you're moving a giant ship, it only moves a little bit at a time. And obviously you have AAGs, the people that run things like the criminal division, civil division, that also have important managerial roles on kind of the day-to-day operations and the judgment calls. But again, the Attorney General himself or herself is going to be asked to make some really difficult calls, maybe ones we don't hear about for years. And I think that thankfully, I suspect that her temperament and her experience can serve her well in that position.
Todd Blanche, John Sauer, Emil Bove, Will Scharf, and now Pam Bondi, all people who have represented Trump in some form that are going in. You also represented him. Would you take a job in the administration? You waiting by the phone?
I'm not waiting by the phone. I don't know what's left. Dog catcher? I mean, maybe. I'll give it some thought. Look, I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I enjoy doing what I'm doing. I enjoy having a good relationship with a former client. We still get along, and I still am very happy for him in terms of persevering the lawfare that offended me and that caused me to even testify in front of Congress about it. So, I think changing DOJ is something that is conceivable. It is something where the culture can be changed. And it might take a lot of time and a lot of fighting, but it's worth pursuing.
Former Assistant U.S. Attorney Ellie Honig. Ellie, Pam Bondi is not a household name.
So they're switching to a new person here that they're going to interview. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support my work and help support your health. Take my advice. Follow my lead. I'll lead you to the right path to boost up your energy levels, improve your immune system, slow down the aging process. All right? There's no panacea. It's not, magic or anything. It's diligence, all right? And continuity. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the omega-3. It helps with your cardiovascular health. How it works is that it brings down your LDL levels and increases your HDL levels. Very important to take every day. Olive leaf extract, a great product that I have on my store. It's a dual purpose product. It helps with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. How does it work? It brings down inflammation, but it also helps to bring down LDL and HDL levels. So it's synergistic with omega-3. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the olive leaf extract. It is a great way to improve your immune system and your cardiovascular system. Lignans, extremely important to help with improving your immune system, and it is synergistic with olive leaf extract. Lignans will lower inflammation and also soak up free radicals. Please go to my store, and this is in a powder. It has a little scooper. You mix it with your food or mix it with filtered water. You take it every day, boost up your immune system. This is really important, especially after the crisis that we went through in 2020. All right? Trust me on this. All right? I know what I'm talking about. Get the lignans to boost up your immune system. Some people are going to be, getting to an age where they're going to start doing screenings, cancer screenings, like mammograms or, colon screenings or, other types of, prostate screenings and all this. More cases are going up. The number of incidences of certain types of cancers are going up since 2020. All right, I've done multiple videos, maybe 20 different videos on this. All right, I don't just say it, I show the CDC incident numbers. Not just that, I tell you what the mechanisms are and why it's happening, what the molecular biology is taking place and how it's shutting down tumor suppressor genes and tumor suppressor proteins. All right? You need to boost up your immune system. If you don't, you're going to regret it. Now, it's your choice. But if you choose not to do something and something bad happens, don't be surprised that it happened, because you should have taken the advice of others. Because I've seen it happen. All right? You need to pay attention. I'm telling you how to mitigate it. There's no panacea, there's no magic bullet, but the point I'm making is that people's risks for cancers are elevated. You need to start paying attention. So that's, unfortunately there are so many people out there that don't pay attention to people's advice, especially when it comes to their health. And what happens is that they'll start listening once they start having problems. But by the time you have a problem, then it's much harder to fix. It's like, a mechanic comes to your house and they go, you know what? Let's say it's a neighbor, and a mechanic says, there's something, I hear something with your car is not right. Maybe the timing, or maybe the pistons aren't moving in the engine right. And, if you let me look at it, I can fix it for you for a low cost. And you go, well, it still starts. And, you wait another 2 years and it gets worse and worse and worse. And then all of a sudden the car doesn't start. And you go to the neighbor and go, my car's not working anymore. And the guy goes, you should have listened to me 2 years ago. I could have fixed it for $100. Now you need an overhaul in your engine, and it's going to cost you $6,000. Take that lesson, because that's what's going to be happening to your health if you don't pay attention. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. As we get older, our pancreas doesn't function as robustly, all right? And it's important to supplement so we reduce the load on the pancreas. Digestive enzyme complex helps with that. This will help break down carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, so you can absorb the nutrients, reduce the stress on your pancreas, and that way, you won't have some of the digestive issues. Right? If you work out, let's say you're young and you're really super healthy, the digestive enzyme complex. Your muscles quicker. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. Okay, so let's continue with CNN talking about Pam Bondi being the new nominee for Attorney General.
Everyone, obviously those of us in Trump world know her very well. When you look at her qualifications, how does she compare to previous picks for Attorney General?
Okay, well, she's way more qualified than Matt Gaetz. Let's start with that. You know, last week when Matt Gaetz was announced as Trump's original pick, you and I said there's two main things you have to look at: qualification and independence. So on the first of those qualifications, Pam Bondi is, without a question, qualified to be Attorney General. She's been a prosecutor for 20 years in Florida. For 8 of those, she was the Attorney General of the state. That's a very big, very complicated job, and that level of experience is on par with or better than most United States Attorneys General that we've seen over the past 50 years or so. When we get into independence, though, things get a little more complicated. Now, there's nothing wrong or unusual with an Attorney General who shares the same politics and ideology as the president. That's the way these things work. But I think the big problem with Pam Bondi is she was a vocal 2020 election denier. And I think that raises legitimate questions about her independence and her credibility, and I expect that to be a sticking point when she goes in front of the Senate.
But I guess the question...
If you have an opinion about something and it goes against the national security state, you're evil. Amazing.
Has the curve changed? Like, I mean, we all know when we were in school, you got graded on a curve in some cases, and it would help you a lot with what ultimately how you scored. I mean, could that be a dynamic here, given maybe 4 years ago or 8 years ago, she would not have been a conventional choice for Attorney General, but in the dynamic of who is being put up for the cabinet now, I think that's a question of whether that changes this.
You know what CNN should be saying is that she's a qualified candidate and she's a female. And it's a great opportunity for young females to see that someone, you know, can reach to higher levels of government and do an adequate job. No. But if it was a Democrat that did this and elevated a woman to the Attorney General, it would be all over the news and how, you know, how important this is for the female establishment and feminism in general. The same thing happened with the Supreme Court. They demonize when the Republicans put a minority into power. But they put a Democrat on a pedestal if they do it. It's crazy. It's crazy. And of course CNN, you know, promotes that crap. I can't stand this news anchor. Absolutely can't stand her. Her voice just gives me a headache.
Yeah, I think that's a... So what is ClickUp? ClickUp is an all-in-one productivity software where you can manage everything and anything related to your work. Your documents, your...
Yeah, I think that's a great observation. I think if we compare her to Matt Gaetz, she exceeds him on every level by far. But if we go back to sort of a normal curve, I think it's a closer call. One person who I think is an interesting historical comparison for Pam Bondi is Janet Reno. Now, I'm not saying Pam Bondi will be Janet Reno, but Janet Reno had a similar background. She had been a state-level prosecutor in Florida for about 15 years at the time when Bill Clinton nominated her to become Attorney General. Now, I think the difference, though, is Janet Reno was probably the single most independent Attorney General we've had in this country for at least the last 75 years, and maybe beyond that, often to the consternation of the Clinton administration. I think every indication is that Pam Bondi will not be anywhere near that independent, if she'll be independent at all. But again, this is a Republican administration. Donald Trump won the election. We're not going to have an Attorney General, Eric Holder, or Sally Yates, or Pete Buttigieg, or Elizabeth Warren. This is elections have consequences.
Well, what does that look like, though? Because that has been the norm for the White House ever since the Nixon era of this independence between the Justice Department and the White House. I mean, last I checked, President Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland had not spoken in quite some time. He was actually quite frustrated with him. But that independence layer is there, obviously, for a reason based on past historical precedents. We'll see what that looks like. I do want to mention, though, because you talk about her what this looks like. You mentioned her role in filing those election-related lawsuits in 2020. She also previously has been a registered lobbyist for Qatar. There was the time when she faced the scrutiny over the $25,000, the campaign contribution she got from Trump at the same time her office was considering signing on to other litigation investigations into Trump University. Are those questions that you would expect to come up at her confirmation hearing?
Oh, absolutely. That is all fair game. If you're going to go put yourself up for Attorney General, you have to assume everything you've done is going to be fair game for questioning. And I think that latter thing that you mentioned, Caitlin, is going to be a big deal. What happened was Donald Trump's charitable foundation made a $25,000 donation to Pam Bondi's super PAC. At the time, Pam Bondi, which is Attorney General of Florida, was considering joining a lawsuit against Donald Trump for his university, quote unquote university. Now, ultimately, the state of New York brought that lawsuit, but Pam Bondi decided not to bring it. And when that transaction came under scrutiny, originally the party said, whoops, it was a mistake. We actually didn't mean to donate it to Pam Bondi. We meant to give it to some other entity, some other nonprofit in Kansas. Ultimately, though, that was disproven. That was proven to not be the case. That got them into some trouble with the IRS. They had to give the donation back. So that's exactly the kind of thing that I think is fair play here. And Caitlin, it's important to know, we are now looking at a possible situation where the top 4 officials at the Justice Department, and that could be Pam Bondi, could be Todd Blanche, who's nominated for Deputy AG, John Sauer, who's up for Solicitor General, and it could be Emil Bove, have all represented Donald Trump in some personal capacity. And it's important to know it's a very different job than being AG. When you're the personal lawyer or criminal lawyer for anybody, your interests align 100% with that person. When you're the Attorney General, though, you're not supposed to have the same orientation. There are times when a good Attorney General, like Janet Reno, has to do things that are adverse to a president and has to exercise independence. So I think that would be the overarching question.
All right, so that's CNN. What's going on with the Treasury over at the Trump team?
A lot of President Trump's first 100 days on Capitol Hill. So if they can get this plan to work, and if they can get enough Republican senators to go with it, I presume that they can, then you score your idea of moving quickly, getting a shadow Fed chair, and also making Wall Street fairly comfortable with where you're going on 2 of the biggest picks from the economic perspective.
Meanwhile, Secretary Lutnick, assuming he's confirmed, becomes the tariff czar. They put USTR under Commerce. That's the tariff house. That's how that works. Treasury gets covered because Lutnick is doing it.
Yeah, so this is where the soap opera version of the Trump administration begins.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, you're going to have President Trump pushing tariffs. Tariffs are very popular with the president. This is something he's campaigned on, and most likely something that we're going to see in the first half of next year. But Wall Street, on the other hand, may not like tariffs so much. If companies like Home Depot or Nike or Adidas have to start buying a lot more expensive products from outside of the United States, Wall Street's not going to like that. So you're going to have the Treasury Secretary at one point saying, look, these stocks may be going into the red because of your tariff policy, but on the other hand, you're going to have Commerce saying, well, this is what we were elected to do. I don't envy them and how they're going to have this decision and how they're going to have to fight this out.
Right.
But ultimately, it's going to be President Trump's decision to either direct Commerce to move forward with these tariffs or not. We will always tell our clients, though, just remember, tariffs, for the most part, come from the power of the presidency, which means you're going to see a lot of headline risk to begin, but then as the process plays out, there could be exemptions, there could be lobbying, there could be reciprocal tariff threats from China, for example. So presidents never back themselves into political back corners with tariffs. It's a long, drawn-out process as opposed to a magic wand that happens on day one.
All right, just to do a market cap here. The S&P 500 is trading at 5,972. Again, I have a target year end of 5,800 to maybe 6,000, 6,100 by year end. Euro is trading, the euro to the USD is trading at 1.04 compared to a couple days ago. That means that the dollar is strengthening, and oil is trading up, and it's trading just below $71 a barrel. VIX index is trading just below 16, so that means that risk is lower in the market, so it's, you know, pro equity. So what's going on in the news, you know, internationally or domestically, seems to be positive for equities.
tier priority for Mar-a-Lago. The reason being is there's about 18 names I counted.
Before I get back to Bloomberg, if you like to, call in, go to Spaces on my X feed. It's Telemetry episode 29. Just raise your hand, and if you want to talk about what you think is going on in the Trump administration, or your take on what's going on in Europe, with these ATACMS and the ICBMs that were launched by Russia. That's really not an ICBM, but some sort of new technology that's supersonic or hypersonic. So, please go to Spaces on my feed and raise your hand, and I'll let you talk. I think it's important to have a dialogue, all right?
Yeah, but I don't think you're gonna see this really fast deregulatory effort over at the SEC.
The crypto loves this, right? I mean, we're looking at $100,000 here. The difference since the election has been wild, and the money made. I know you're not a technical analyst here, but those who do cover the space think there's a new floor, that this idea of a national reserve has completely changed the dynamic for Bitcoin, at least. Do you see it that way?
So sort of. So right now the United States is sitting on around 208,000 Bitcoin. So that's a lot of cash right now. And so Senator Lummis has proposed this bill that the United States should build a strategic reserve of about 5% of the world's Bitcoin, so the United States can own it. So we already own 208,000. So that could be packaged together, put into what they call quote unquote reserve. The problem, however, is to get additionally is you're going to need appropriations from Congress to essentially direct monies to purchase Bitcoin, and or the executive is going to have to figure out how to finagle appropriations for other things to be used for purchase for Bitcoin. It's going to get messy, and so that's why I think this bill is the most likely scenario. Certainly, something that we'll be talking about next year. I don't want to say it's going to have decent chances of passage immediately, but
so the ones that are watching the dashboard, I added to the watch list BITO and BITI. These are ETFs for longing Bitcoin and shorting Bitcoin. So if you wanted a long Bitcoin ETF, BITO, and it's trading right now at 26.72.
At Bloomberg Intelligence, you're just back from a tour of European capitals because clients want to know what in the world is going on post-election. The great part about Nathan Dean is he's about to go on another tour of European capitals after Thanksgiving. What was the most common question, most common worry that you encountered?
So obviously the European tariffs, and our view on that is that it'll eventually come, but I think China's the highest priority. Yeah. But then we got a lot of questions about the Inflation Reduction Act, because there's a lot of European capex coming into the United States on these ideas that solar incentives are going to stick around. Wow. So our thought on the IRA is that even though you'll hear whispers of it being thrown into the tax reform debate, the IRA, for the most part, we think is cemented. It's $433 billion. That's cheap when you have to figure out how to pay for $4 to $4.5 trillion of tax extensions. Certain aspects of it can be cut, but ultimately, there's a lot of European money going in from the industrial base into southern Trump states like Alabama, Louisiana, and Texas, that's building solar farms and solar plants, and local politicians do not want to see those 700 jobs disappear because of something that's happening.
The solar stocks have fallen off a cliff since the election.
Yeah, I mean, but
Could be an opportunity.
It could be an opportunity.
Great to see you. Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for always being great. That's Nathan Dean, of course, you know that, with his patented fleece vest right here in the flesh. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. As I mentioned, an important interview ahead. Governor Phil Murphy of New Jersey, as we now assemble our panel. They're with us a touch early, glad to say. Rick Davis and Jeannie Shanzano are with us on the Friday edition. Bloomberg Politics contributors. Rick Davis, partner at Stone Court Capital. Jeannie is political science professor.
Before we go to Fox, talking about the new Attorney General nominee, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support my work and help support your health. Taking Myotrol will help to maintain muscle and gain muscle. It also improves the health of your mitochondria. When you're older, you start to atrophy and it's hard to maintain muscle mass. When you're working out, let's say you're an athlete or even semi-pro or just recreational athlete, taking Myotrol will help get more muscle. You'll have more muscle gain. This has flavonoids, lignans, and polyphenols in it. Now, you should be taking this every day, and when you do a little bit of resistance training, what you'll start to notice is that you're gaining muscle, but also you're maintaining some muscle. A lot of people, they start to lose, if they stop working out, they're losing muscle, right? And when you get older, you start atrophying and you're losing muscle, and this is very prevalent once you get to about 65. And you're not really working out. So my advice is, no matter what age you are, make sure you're working out, all right? You don't have to be an athlete, but this will work for you if you are an athlete. But if you're older, start doing a little bit of cardio, start doing a little bit of resistance training. You don't have to overdo it. Just do a little bit, do some stretching exercise. Balancing exercise is very important to improve your neurons, all right? And when you do that on a regular basis, and you're taking supplements such as Myotrol, what's going to happen is you're going to have more energy because your ATP, you're increasing your ATP, the health of your mitochondria is going to be increasing, and that energy is going to allow you to build muscle, all right? And you're reducing the atrophy. So you're building muscle and you're reducing the atrophy of the muscle. When you're younger and you're working out all the time, to get those muscle gains and to recover quicker, you need to take Myotrol. So this is a dual purpose for people that work out a lot and for people that are older. And when I say older, you start losing muscle mass at about age 40, 45. All right, so you need to really pay attention to this, and you'll get these compound benefits when you start having more muscle and more energy. Then what will happen is if you do the proper exercises, you'll start to notice that you're having more back muscles. Your core muscles in your abdomen are going to get better if you do certain types of exercises, and your back muscles are going to improve, and so your posture is going to improve, and so you're reducing that slouching when you get older. So doing the proper exercising and taking the proper supplementation, you're actually aligning your back better, and you're going to get better blood flow. So, again, it's easier to deal with problems early on than when you start having osteoarthritis, when you start having osteoporosis, when you start having scoliosis, all right? You don't want that, all right? So pay attention to me. Exercise, don't overdo it, and take the proper supplementation. Take Myotrol. This will help to build muscle and maintain muscle and improve your mitochondrial health. Really important. And vitamin B complex. This is important. The first few B vitamins helps with your mitochondrial health, so your ATP will go up. Vitamin B helps with cellular metabolism, really important. And certain B vitamins also help with neuroprotection. Really important when you get older. Remember what I said. You need to do balancing exercises and stretching exercises. Why? Because you need to activate the cerebellum. If you don't activate your cerebellum, it's going to age, and you're going to start having wobbling issues and gait issues. Pay attention to me. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin B complex. And lastly, resveratrol. Resveratrol is an antioxidant. It soaks up free radicals. It also helps to get rid of senesced cells. It's synergistic with C60 and NAD+ and ubiquinol. The best way to take resveratrol is to take it in a stack. Take it with C60 or NAD+ or ubiquinol. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the resveratrol. I've been taking resveratrol for decades, all right? And Alex Jones is younger than I am. Does Alex Jones look younger than Dr. Paul Cottrell? Not so much.
Elect Donald Trump nominating longtime ally and former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi to serve as Attorney General in the United States in his second Trump administration. This after Matt Gaetz withdrew his name from consideration. Here's Bondi with me on this program back in May.
None of these other trials will make it to trial ever, and especially they won't before the election. All of these prosecutors hate Donald Trump. They have a personal vendetta against him. They've been very vocal about it. Some have campaigned on getting Donald Trump. And as a career prosecutor, Maria, if you even have an appearance of a conflict, you get off a case. You recuse yourself from a case. There are safeguards in effect for that. And you put other prosecutors on the case. And here, they have done quite the opposite. Look at Fannie Willis, of course, in Georgia, her affair with Nathan Wade. That case is falling apart. Jack Smith, they have said they've altered evidence in that case. And now I think with the presidential immunity issue out there, none of these cases will get to trial prior to the elections.
Joining me now is Wisconsin Congressman Scott Fitzgerald, member of the House Financial Services and Judiciary Committees. Congressman, good to see you. Thanks very much for being here. Your reaction to President Trump choosing Pam Bondi as next AG?
Pam's going to be great. I've known her for a number of years, been involved in a lot of different things that certainly I think many members of both the House and the Senate have worked on in and around Pam, both as AG in Florida and at the federal level with the Trump administration, first Trump administration.
So you think she'll get confirmed? You think she'll get confirmed then?
I do. I think she'll have she'll have the ability to kind of visit those Senate offices, and they'll be able to hear an explanation, I think, of where President Trump wants to go.
Hours after.
With these agencies that, the 40-some agencies that have run amok over the last 4 years, and Pam's going to be able to deliver that message effectively. She's great.
Well, President Trump will also get the chance to hit the ground running on filling two key positions once he takes office. He's got Securities and Exchange Commission Chairman Gary Gensler announcing he'll resign on January 20th, the day of Trump's inauguration, of course, while the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation FDIC Chairman Martin Gruenberg says he'll resign on January 19th. Republicans on the Financial Services Committee recently released a report detailing toxic culture at the FDIC under Gruenberg. Congressman, what can you tell us?
Oh, it's been unbelievable. I mean, when he's been before the committee and was forced to answer some of those pointed questions, really no good answers. So yeah, it's FDIC has been a mess for some time. And then you've got Gary Gensler, where it's been chaotic the entire time under the Biden administration with the ESG climate rules. You had SAB 121 that blocked a lot of the banks' digital asset momentum. So there's been a lot of issues in and around both of these guys. And I think the Financial Services Committee is ready to move on.
What about FTC head Alina Khan? She's been stopping all the deal flow, right? So you've got SEC Chairman Gary Gensler throwing all these rules and regulations at corporate America and investigating, suing companies. And then you've got Alina Khan over at the FTC stopping mergers. Do you think all of that goes away in a new Trump administration?
I do. As a matter of fact, there's enough.
So my wife got me this weird new kitchen knife as a Christmas gift. God, I love her. At first glance, one of them looked like a Viking sword.
I do. As a matter of fact, there's a number of bills that have been moving both through judiciary and through financial services that do just that. They will help with the Trump extensions on the tax cuts. They will certainly make it easier for merger activity to continue. And then the last thing is just general deregulation, which is something which would be a 180 compared to where the Biden administration is.
Absolutely. And Carolyn Danny, jump in here. I remember when Trump was in his first term and he staged that whole, thing with scissors and cutting red tape and stacks of paper saying, cutting regulation is a beautiful thing. Jump in here.
Yeah, Congressman, I think for millions of Americans, part of this mandate in this election was to throw off the yoke of the bureaucracy that was suffocating them as they operated small businesses. And this was after, of course, Kamala Harris claimed to be the champion of entrepreneurship while privately fighting against them. And I know that Trump in his first term, he said for every, I think it was 5 regulations that were introduced, we were going to cut 1 or 2. Do you have any insights into what his plans are with that? Is there going to be a new ratio for every set of regulations that are introduced? Is he going to roll some back? How is he going to in practice, remove a lot of the red tape that hurts so many Americans?
Yeah, one thing I keep continually telling other members is, the blueprint for this is REINS Act, which we've seen at the state levels, which is basically laying out a pathway for us to not only work with the private sector, but what you really need is to get the information from them to say, what are the rules that are in place or have been expanded under this administration that President Trump can come in on day one under executive order and just completely eliminate. I mean, we saw Biden do it, right?
Yeah.
We saw him eliminate the Keystone Pipeline within the first week. I mean, those are the types of things that I think we need to be ready to do on day one. And I think most of the chairmen of the committees understand what that long list of rules are, and they need to be eliminated almost immediately.
Yeah, I mean, corporate America certainly understands as well. Let's get to the business at hand on a more urgent basis. We're less than a month away from a potential government shutdown on December 20th. Congressman, Speaker Johnson is pushing for a continuing resolution, which would extend the deadline into early 2025 and certainly Trump's second term. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget President Maya McGinnis was with me here yesterday. Here's what she said, watch.
The first thing is that lawmakers should really pledge that there will be no new borrowing. We're on track to borrow $22 trillion over the next decade. They should make a commitment that other than huge emergencies, they will not pass legislation that would add to the borrowing.
Here is the problem, is that we always have an emergency to give more power to the national security state, to give more power to these agencies, and to spend more money. Let's stop having emergencies. Secondly, I am all for DOGE going in and, getting rid of the deadwood in these agencies, the overspending. They're not doing competitive bids anymore. They're not looking at budget lines and trying to talk to their vendors and bringing down the costs. I mean, there's these cases where there's a congressional hearing, and you have, where someone lifts up a part, that maybe Boeing is providing, that costs hundreds of dollars, yet they could get it at Home Depot for, a few cents. Maybe I'm, exaggerating a bit, but the point here is that, are we really spending our money properly? The ones that are taking our taxpayer dollars are wasting it. And so DOGE going in and fixing that problem and right-sizing these agencies and cutting through the red tape and cutting through regulation and shrinking down the workforce, I think is a good thing. That we've had a bloated government for a long time, and it's not efficient. It's not helping. If you're a small business owner, a lot of the regulations are hurting you, not helping you. The tax code is just, you need to have a Ph.D. in taxation, to know from year to year what's going on. It's crazy.
So if we add new policies, we need to find ways to offset them. When we increase the debt ceiling, we should do it in a way that hopefully is paired with policies that decrease our borrowing, not increase it like we've seen before. We've seen a lot of leadership on this coming in.
Now, maybe, I'm a little bit, old-fashioned, but I don't think we should be setting a new debt ceiling. We need to force Congress to spend in its means. And I don't believe in this idea, we're gonna default on our debt and all this stuff. No. You cut spending. You cut spending. If you can't afford it, you cut the spending. Don't just keep on increasing the debt limit. Because what happens is that it wasn't that long ago where the debt per person was, about $60,000 to $70,000. Now the debt per person is $106,000. That's per person. Now, if you look at it per taxpayer, it's $272,000. That's crazy. $36 trillion in debt? What for? What for? A $4 trillion black hole for 20 years in the Middle East post 9/11? It's crazy.
The House. I'm more worried about the Senate that wants to engage in hand waving and kind of make some of these costs of extending tax cuts or raising the debt ceiling without saving.
Congressman, what is the plan going into this next funding battle?
Yeah, what Speaker Johnson laid out in conference this week was that there was still a discussion between whether or not that CR should extend till after the first of the year, kind of clear the decks for President Trump so that we could start to implement any type of initiative that he wants to accomplish without the distraction of doing the CR. So compare that to an omnibus, which I think is what many people are very concerned about, because that's what Schumer is going to be pushing for. And the speaker is dug in. I mean, he told members that is not the route that I want to take. But I think you're probably going to know more in that first week of December, because he's going to have to go back into the conference and make that pitch to all the members. You know, we're still operating with just the slimmest of majority, and as a result of that, they're going to have to go member to member and kind of make this pitch and sell whatever they think they're going to be able to get done to make it a good path for President Trump in that first 100 days.
Understood. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much.
We're going to transition to Fox Business about attack on the U.S. Russia reportedly threatening U.S. defense base in Poland. But before we do that, please help support my work and help to support your health, boost up your immune system, slow down the aging process. A great way to do that is to take the vitamins that I have on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I have vitamin K2. This is a dual purpose product. This will help with bone health and also your cardiovascular health. And you stack it with D3. D3 helps to absorb calcium. It's a gene expression cofactor, and it will help cells to go into apoptosis if they need to, especially if they're infected. So you stack them together and you improve your health. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take K2 and D3 together. Another great stack to improve your immune system and to reduce inflammation is to take turmeric. It's an antioxidant and it'll bring down pro-inflammatory cytokines. Ashwagandha root helps to control cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels. That will bring down the inflammation in your vascular system. When you stack these together, you're improving your immune system and your cardiovascular system. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Improve your immune system and your cardiovascular system by taking turmeric and taking ashwagandha root.
Thanks, Maria.
All right, Scott Fitzgerald joining us this morning.
Let's go to war in Ukraine. Hold on.
Hours after Russia launched a ballistic missile into Ukraine, the Kremlin threatened to attack a new American defense base in Poland with advanced weapons. Victoria Coates from the Heritage Foundation joins me now. Victoria, thanks for being with us. This would be, would it not, a direct attack on NATO?
Good to be with you, Brian. Yes, this is deeply concerning. This is a new missile defense base on the.
This is what I am saying. I've been saying this for over a year. The deep state wants to create a situation where it creates an emergency situation where they're going to get more power, the national security state. If Russia hits a NATO country, then this whole Article 5 gets kicked in, and there's emergency powers and more, spending, and they will try to clip the Trump administration from restructuring these agencies because we're in an emergency situation. The deep state wants Russia to hit Poland.
Exceed the United States just opened. It's called Aegis Ashore. It's one of our most sophisticated missile defense systems. It protects not only Poland, but also our Baltic allies, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. And so, yes, this would be very much an attack on the United States, on NATO. And, you know, I have a very, very bad sense we're sort of drifting back into the Cold War here.
Okay, so I want to talk about that very bad sense for a second. I mean, you get saber rattling, you get rhetoric, and then you get things like...
Neil Ferguson, the historian, said we're already in Cold War 2.0. All right, so wake up, honey. We're already there. And it's our posturing and our international gurus that led us down this path.
Translate into action. How are you reading the rhetoric from Russia right now?
Well, this has really been an escalatory pattern for the last maybe week to 10 days since President Biden made the decision to give the long-range attack missiles, that the ATACMS and the HIMARS, to Ukraine to attack in Russia proper. And obviously the Kremlin didn't like that. They lowered their threshold for using a tactical nuclear weapon. They fired off an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile, at Ukraine, which was bizarre because those only exist to carry nuclear weapons, but this one had been modified to not carry a nuclear weapon. And now we have this. So clearly things are hotting up in Ukraine. And the problem is that the United States is in a state of transition from one president to another, and it's not entirely clear who's calling the shots.
Do our adversaries view the 2 months before President-elect Trump takes office?
We have nuclear subs that have conventional missile systems and nuclear missile systems. So what's wrong with Russia launching a missile that has dual capability? We have that. I don't understand. We've changed our posturing with it's a good thing, right? Do you want the ICBM to have a nuclear weapon on it? Of course not. So is Putin a irrational actor? Probably not. But I'll tell you, the national security state, for them to get power and to hamstring the President Trump's administration, a great way to do it is to cause some sort of emergency kind of thing happening in Europe. That is some sort of missile that is conventional, that hits a NATO country. That would create an emergency situation, or some sort of tactical nuke going off in Ukraine. Either one of those is going to change the whole dynamic of the Trump administration and the way we spend money in Congress.
That as a window to do exactly this sort of thing?
Yeah, transitions are always dangerous, Brian, but they can be orderly if, it's clear that the caretaker president is just that, not making major decisions, not creating crises. But the Biden administration seems to be doing the opposite. It's almost as if they want to make this situation as difficult as possible for the incoming president. Yep. And I think, though, clearly Vladimir Putin knows Donald Trump. He knows there's going to be a much more firm hand on the American tiller when he's inaugurated on January 20th. So my hope would be that he keeps it as much in the box as possible until then, to allow for a negotiated end to this terrible war. But it's deeply concerning for the next 60 days.
All right, next one for you, Victoria. Senator John Fetterman slammed the International Criminal Court after they issued arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. Fetterman said, no standing, relevance, or path. Bleep that. Victoria, is there any significance to arrest warrants from the ICC like this?
Well, there is, and I am not surprisingly a conservative, but I will say as a native Pennsylvanian, I'm extremely proud of the senior senator from Pennsylvania right now for telling it like it is. The United States and Israel, neither of us are signatories to the ICC, so this is not binding. But we've had countries from Holland to Canada announce that they will arrest the sitting prime minister of Israel if he sets foot on their soil. These are NATO allies of the United States who are saying this. So it is chilling to hear this happen. The other thing the ICC did, though, Brian, is they issued an arrest warrant for one of the dead leadership of Hamas that Israel has already eliminated. So it sort of shows you how ridiculous this is. But, you know, it's not fair to have the duly elected Prime Minister of Israel not be able to travel to a NATO ally.
Right. To talk about an institution totally undermining its own credibility. Victoria, we got to leave it there. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
All right. I want to go to CNN about Gaetz not returning to Congress.
This is why your blood sugar spikes and feet burns. Did you know type 2 diabetes is a completely reversible condition? You may not know this, but the biological...
We heard from Matt Gaetz in the last hour. What did he say?
Well, one, he said for the first time officially that he would not be rejoining Congress. This, of course, comes as we know there is still a debate over the release of that ethics report. But he also said this about his meeting with senators when he was still in the running and still nominated to be Attorney General.
While our discussions were going well, I found myself having to do two jobs at one time, Charlie, and you got a front row seat to this. I had a full-time job explaining to senators that maybe a tweet I said about them was rash and not reflective of how I would serve as Attorney General. And at the same time, I was having to build out the Department of Justice with the right human talent, the right policy infrastructure. And Pam Bondi's confirmation won't have some of the sharp edges that mine would have.
So clearly Matt Gaetz in some of those meetings had to defend some of the more polarizing things he said, in addition to, as we know, this growing concern among Trump's orbit that more damning evidence was inside of that ethics report, that some of that was going to come out and hurt his chances even more. I have heard from one source on Capitol Hill essentially saying they believe there were so many hard no's already. That was before they'd heard any new information out of the ethics report, that it would seem impossible that Matt Gaetz was going to actually get to be confirmed. As you noted, this was a moment for Donald Trump. He also had heard this and told Matt Gaetz he just simply did not have the votes before Matt Gaetz decided to withdraw his name.
All right, Kristen, thank you so much for that reporting. I want to bring in another exceptional group of reporters here. Zolan Youngs of the New York Times, CNN's Lauren Fox, Nia Malika Henderson of CNN and Bloomberg, and Michael Warren, senior editor of The Dispatch. Happy Friday to all who celebrate. Lauren, I want to start with you because that Matt Gaetz clip is so telling. The fact that he just openly admitted that in these meetings that you were following him around going to over the past few days, he had to confront the fact that he really pissed off a lot of these fellow Republicans in various ways over many years because of his combative style.
Yeah, put aside the fact that senators always feel as though they are superior to the House of Representatives. That is a dynamic that exists across Capitol Hill. The reality is in these meetings, senators were doing two things. They were trying to educate him about what this process was going to look like, all of the baggage that was going to come out. You heard John Cornyn say very publicly, there will be no secrets here. You also, I had some reporting yesterday that in one of the meetings that a source was in, that a senator actually wanted to know, what do you think your whip count is? And the team did not have an answer. Then the senator wanted to go member by member of the Senate Judiciary Committee to walk through what Matt Gaetz had been told by each of them. And at the end, this source told me there were at least 5 people who had given him some "we believe in you, we're with you" answer, but not a confirmed "yes, we will vote for you." And that just lays out how difficult this was. That was just on the Judiciary Committee.
That's really, really interesting. And let's hear a little bit more from what Matt Gaetz said this morning. This about his nemesis, Kevin McCarthy.
I was dealing with a politically motivated body. They didn't like me because of what I did to Kevin McCarthy. All of them were handpicked by Kevin McCarthy, and they had an axe to grind. So that was going to serve as at least enough of a basis to delay my confirmation as Attorney General. And I could have answered all those questions. I could have engaged in a months-long fact battle, but we don't have months to go through that. We got to have an AG ready to go day one.
Obviously, the Senate is not handpicked by Kevin McCarthy. I think he was referring to the people who he was serving with in the House. And when it comes to axes to grind, I think Kevin McCarthy would argue that being ousted as Speaker of the House by Matt Gaetz, that the axe is maybe being held by somebody else.
Look, everybody on Capitol Hill had an axe to grind with Matt Gaetz. This is the problem, whether it's the House Ethics Committee or Kevin McCarthy allies or senators. It's interesting that Matt Gaetz sort of went back to that, the establishment is against me, when he had just laid out in the previous clip how it was like a death of 1,000 cuts. He had said something.
I mean, Gaetz was a very, very radioactive guy, all right, for the House. But the thing is McCarthy, he wasn't really a Trump supporter. At times he was, but at other times, so McCarthy and McConnell, so McConnell being the Senate leader for the Republican Party, or what they call the minority leader, I think is how they phrase it, and McCarthy, you know, when he was the speaker, they weren't really pro-Trump. There were times where they were kind of slow walking stuff. So the problem is that Gaetz was too radioactive. The other part of the problem is the establishment isn't really so pro-MAGA at all.
Something to anger just about everybody who could be a potential ally in a tough fight. So were the Ethics Committee allegations, the things that were going to come out in this report, a real problem for him? Yes, but I agree that the reporting is very solid all around, that it was a lot more than just a handful of senators, just the 4 that would have blocked him from getting confirmed. It was a lot of senators, including, I hear, senators who publicly were saying maybe nice things about Matt Gaetz in a way to sort of say, we like the pick from Donald Trump, we have some questions. Those people were even some hard now.
This is why I find it, like, in this moment, can we really say that now the Senate is going to be a guardrail against the president-elect, right? Because we're talking about, in Matt Gaetz, somebody who was one of...
Why are these talking heads keep on trying to state that we need guardrails? We need guardrails against Trump. Heaven forbid that Trump actually restructures the government where it's efficient, it spends less money, and it's for the will of the people and not against the people. Heaven forbid. You know, these talking heads, I'll tell you, they drive me nuts. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the natto kinase. This is a supplement that I have on my store now. It's fibrinolytic. It will break up clots, but by taking this on a regular basis, you're gonna lower your LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. That will improve your total cholesterol. So taking natto kinase and stacking it with other stuff like omega-3 will help improve your lipid profile and improve your cardiovascular health. Really important. Ubiquinol. This is the best bioavailable CoQ10 that you can get. All right? It's very high quality. CoQ10 is really important for your body, all right? Especially your neurons. So take this ubiquinol. It's the bioavailable, the highest bioavailable CoQ10 that you can get. It's an antioxidant. It helps to increase your energy levels, and it helps to improve the health of your neurons. Very important as you get older. Extremely important. And vitamin C. We're in the cold season. Take vitamin C on a regular basis. This also has magnesium in it. And drink it with filtered water. If you're not feeling well during the cold season, take a double dose of it and drink it. Drink filtered water. But take vitamin C. And vitamin C not only helps with your immune system, it also helps with your skin. It is a vitamin that cross-links with collagen to improve the dermal layer of your skin. NAC is something that I've added to my stack, my personal stack, to improve my health. Why? Because it boosts up glutathione levels. Glutathione is really important to help soak up free radicals, and this is synergistic with C60. So C60 is soaking up free radicals in one pathway, NAC is soaking up free radicals in a different pathway, and they're synergistic. So take NAC, soak up those free radicals, improve your energy levels, and NAC also helps to reduce anxiety, all right? And put your system more into a parasympathetic system. So NAC, take every day, add it to your stack, and soak up those free radicals. If you notice, with this whole anti-aging and longevity and boosting up your immune system, it's based on 3 major pillars. Structural nanosilver, neutralize pathogens. The second pillar, reduce inflammation, taking things that will lower pro-inflammatory cytokines like turmeric and ashwagandha. And soak up free radicals by taking things like C60 and ubiquinol and NAC. And lastly, NAD+, extremely important. Why? Boosts up energy levels, helps to repair DNA damage. That happens a lot when you get older. And it's also helping with the health of your neurons, synergistic with ubiquinol and synergistic with NAC. Have you seen a common theme here? By taking certain types of supplementation, you can actually improve the major systems that are typically associated with aging. And if you start early, you'll get the compound effect where you are slowing down the aging process and boosting up your immune system. And your neural health is going to be improved. Very important. Because you don't want to be like a talking head on CNN, right? Because they have a lot of neurological damage.
If not the most unpopular Republicans in Congress amongst his own party. So the fact that this was blocked, it's tough to say at this point whether or not, whether the Senate now will actually, establish sort of a check on the president.
This was the easiest to push aside.
That's right.
But it is a misreading on Trump's part, right? He put Matt Gaetz up there. He presumably thought he had a shot. Maybe he thought he could sneak him in there with a recess appointment. Folks on the Senate side don't seem to be too willing to grant him that. So, this is a pick that Trump thought through his power, through what he sees as a mandate, right? I don't really necessarily think it was a mandate, but he thought through his sheer power, he could blow past the anger that people had at Matt Gaetz, and he was very, very wrong. And I think most people, when they saw Matt Gaetz, they said, this is never, ever, ever going to happen, but somehow Trump thought differently.
I want to listen just to the point that you were talking about with regard to whether Gaetz is a canary in the coal mine. I agree with you. I think Matt Gaetz is his own issue and comes with his own, not just baggage, it's like an entire steamship of things that he had to deal with. Listen to Steve Bannon, who has been using, since he got out of prison, using his podcast to gin up the MAGA base and try to send messages to Team Trump.
In that Senate right now, they're thinking, hey, we got him. He's the Bannon of these guys, they talk big. All hat, no cattle. They come up here, the first guy, the golden boy, the guy, the Gaetz, the guy, he's the lead guy, the lead tank, he's the guy. Boom, gone. Suck on that. How tough are you guys? Well, we're going to have to prove we're pretty tough. I keep saying, you back off of these things, they're going to roll you.
I think that, senators, one of the strategies that perhaps they're deploying right now is to not publicly go up against Trump, but to, in these meetings, very privately make clear to nominees that have potential baggage, this is going to be an issue. And just to remind you, there's a public hearing, there's questions for release, there's answers that you have to give us in writing. Everything is going to happen under oath. Are you and your family ready to do this? And I think that that is sort of a very clever way for Republican senators to thread that needle. And so I think the reporting around what members are telling these nominees in private meetings is so important right now.
Yeah, and do you think that regardless of Matt Gaetz being his own kind of in his own, a category of his own, there are other nominees, Pete Hegseth, who has some issues, and he clearly has shown that he wants to fight, but Is this the kind of conversation that senators are having with him?
Absolutely. I mean, this is the kind of conversation that senators are having, and that is independent of issues that they may have on these individuals' stances on policy, on philosophy of how they're going to run these agencies, on their qualifications. That is a whole separate conversation that also is going to transpire in a very public way, and Democrats aren't going to let that stuff go either.
Yeah, I want to ask about something that you wrote about this morning. And the headline is, it's Florida time in Washington. Donald Trump is bringing the Sunshine State to DC, and back, obviously, Pam Bondi, being the former Attorney General of Florida, is a big example. There are others as well.
Yeah, I had actually written, included Matt Gaetz in my write-up, had to strike it from the copy before we went publish, and then was able to slot Pam Bondi right in. So it just goes to prove my point, which as a reporter I love. Look, this is Florida's time, as I quote Brian Ballard, who was sort of a super lobbyist in the first Trump administration. I think he's going to be he's from Tallahassee. He's going to be a force to reckon with. You've got all the way from Susie Wiles, the incoming chief of staff, a lot of the senior staff in the White House, also from Susie Wiles' orbit in Florida. Marco Rubio, Mike Waltz in the National Security Advisor position, and Trump himself is a Florida man now, and it's through and through. You can see it from the way the transition is coming out of Mar-a-Lago. People talk about, well, we got to hear what Palm Beach has to say. I mean, this is a Florida administration, so except for the palm trees, I think Washington's going to look a lot like Florida in a couple months.
All right, so I'm going to go to Fox Business, and they're talking about how Senator Ray and Mayorkas were not showing up to the annual public hearing.
Of the Homeland Security Committee, Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. Senator, what's going on that those two, I almost cursed, men, Ray and Mayorkas, did not show up to testify and speak not only to you, but...
You know why? Because they feel as though they aren't beholden to the will of the people. They feel as though because they're running their agencies that they can do whatever the hell they want. And this is the reason why I keep on saying in a post 9/11 world, the only way to make America, quote, great again is to make sure that we truncate these agencies.
the American people.
Well, first of all, let me say January 20th cannot come soon enough.
Amen.
What they claim is that the threats are so serious that they couldn't really discuss them in public. They needed to brief us in a secure setting. And Chairman of the committee, Chairman Peters apparently rejected that offer. I was chairman of the committee for 6 years. I've been here since 2011. This has been an annual hearing. If there's something so sensitive, we can be briefed in a classified setting. But this is something
I'm telling you that the national security state is setting up for something that is similar to 9/11. Now, does it mean that it happens? Hopefully not. But they're setting something up. They're setting something up to make sure that their power is not truncated.
Just blew off. By the way, if the threats are that serious, and I don't doubt that they are, it's because of what they have done. Particularly Secretary Mayorkas, who's pretty well, ruled over the open border policy that has let, millions of people, some of them terrorists, gang members, cartel members, human traffickers, sex traffickers.
Right. And so what happens is Mayorkas fails on the job, causes risk in the society, and isn't held accountable. Just like these generals that lose wars, they're not held accountable. They'll get their golden parachute at Raytheon.
And present danger that now they won't even talk to Congress about. It's outrageous.
Well, Senator, on a broader scale, we got a lot of threats abroad that some of which are not that too far away. In Europe, for example, where the Biden administration has been ratcheting up the danger and the threat of the situation by providing Ukraine with very lethal weapons, both landmines and these long-range missiles. And I'm just curious, who do you think is making these decisions? If President Biden is going off to the Amazon and Kamala Harris is out on the beach in Hawaii, who's actually making these very critical decisions about foreign policy right now?
I would say nobody knows. I mean, I think that's been true throughout the Biden administration.
Thank you for asking. Dr. Paul Cottrell thinks this. It's a combination between Satan and Bozo the fucking clown.
Forgive me for interrupting, but do you have an idea? Is it Secretary Blinken, perhaps?
Yeah, we really don't know. Is it his chief of staff? Yeah, I don't know. Is it the individuals that turn down his bed at night? Listen, this is a dangerous world, and they're making it more dangerous. I mean, this dangerous escalation, allowing U.S. attacker missiles to go into Russia. You know, Putin has obviously drew the line in the sand. You know, he warned us that NATO was off the table, but Biden wouldn't take that off the table, and Putin went ahead and invaded Ukraine, and now Ukraine is largely destroyed. Like, again, this has been so mishandled, and now on the brink of finally having a responsible president in office. Now they launched this escalation, and of course the reaction was Putin launched an intermediate range ballistic missile with multiple warheads on it. Not nuclear tipped, I mean, but they had to warn the U.S. Because that's the type of missile that could be mistaken for a nuclear weapon. I mean, this is dangerous territory, and for what purpose? Again, the only way this war ends is with a negotiated settlement. Every day that goes by, the result is worse because more Ukraine gets destroyed, more Ukrainians die, more Russian conscripts die. So
create the stress in the European theater where there could be an attack by Russia on a NATO ally, create an emergency, or some sort of miscalculation where tactical nukes are used. But our national security state is doing this to us. And when they make this mistake and something bad happens, they're going to go to Congress and say they need more power and to curtail your freedoms. You don't believe me? Look at what happened during 9/11.
This war should have ended, never should have been started, should have ended within weeks when they were negotiating settlement, but Biden blew that up as well.
By the way,
again,
we have some breaking news, Senator.
I'm seeing enough.
Get this, Senator John said Bob Casey has conceded. So the recount is ongoing right now. It's expected to end in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania next Wednesday. There are multiple counties who've already finished the recount. But Dave McCormick, Republican, is now, well, the vote still has to get certified, but is now your colleague. Now, he has been at orientation, but Bob Casey, with the help of Mark Elias, the lawyer, was digging in and fighting the fight, as Democrats do in the Commonwealth. But Dave McCormick, the senator, Republican from the Commonwealth.
Look at the difference between that close election in Pennsylvania and the close election in Wisconsin. Now, Eric Hovde wanted all the votes counted, but you didn't see any Republican election commissioners violating the law openly and bragging about it and opening up and counting ballots that were completely illegal, judged by the Supreme Court they were illegal. That's what happened in Democrat-controlled areas in Pennsylvania. It is scandalous.
It is. Dave, you want to get to this?
Well, of course, Matt Gaetz has withdrawn as the consideration for Attorney General, so there will be somebody. There's been some speculation, by the way, that he might actually be appointed senator by Governor DeSantis. What do you know about that, if anything?
I don't think that's going to take place. I think Gaetz is so radioactive that it's high probability that his political career is over.
And that was a decision he had to make. I think he was right. He was turning into distraction, and so I actually appreciate the action he took here. Attorney General is incredibly important. President Trump needs warriors like Matt Gaetz. You know, we need to root out the deep state. This is not going to be an easy fight. This is going to be a pitched battle. So he needs people like Matt Gaetz. I'm going to support the type of people that President Trump wants to appoint. But listen, he obviously was a controversial pick, and I appreciate probably wasn't an easy decision for him, but he probably made the right one.
Yeah.
You want to throw out a name of somebody who would be And I'm using this in not literally a skull crusher inside the Department of Justice, Senator. Somebody who will go in there and just shake things up and make the confirmation hearing itself really just full scorched earth for the American people.
Well, again, I want a warrior. I don't have particular names in mind. I'll let that up to President Trump and his transition team. But we need fighters. We really do. We don't need people who are...
All right, so this was when Matt Gaetz withdrawals, when they were doing this recording, but the announcement by Bondi, you know, that she would be elevated as the nominee. All right, so with that, let's drop into Bloomberg and see what they're talking about with the Trump Treasury Secretary there.
Names crop up in the mix here. I think it's fascinating that it's taken this long to figure out Treasury, and it could take much longer still. We don't know timeline here. Whereas Matt Gaetz drops out, and less than 12 hours later, he already has a new name on the list for AG ready to go. So clearly there were ideas in place here, backup plans, as there was perhaps writing on the wall for Matt Gaetz. But does that not mean there's not backup plans to the backup plans if he doesn't like the Treasury options that have been presented to him thus far?
We're on the backup plans right now. So Mark Rowan and Kevin Warsh, those people these are not in the initial discussions, brought them down there this week. But those interviews were days ago. There's still meetings happening. They're still trying to figure everything out. And there's just, you basically have an internal conflict here of Trump wants someone who is a Wall Street person, who has the pedigree and experience, but also is MAGA. And those things are oftentimes at odds.
Pete Hegseth making the rounds yesterday in the Senate. He did have an answer to the charges that had been levied against him. A police report came out detailing this sexual assault case that he paid money to settle. He says that they decided not to file charges, and that's the end of the story. Is it?
We'll find out. 2 months is a really long time. There could be a drip of allegations that continue to come out here. Trump is basically daring the Republican senators, saying, "Look, defy me." But there's, as we saw, the Republicans, in the Senate are not afraid. They said no to Matt Gaetz, they say no to someone else. So this is really going to be sort of the key one to watch here. It looks like some of the others, perhaps Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr. may get by. They're a little bit more qualified from a. At least that's what Republican senators are saying. If you look at the resumes, a lot of people, they don't necessarily have the experience that one would traditionally have. But I think there's widespread recognition among Republicans in the Congress that they can't,
a Trump nominee doesn't have the traditional experience because they weren't inculcated in the deep state to toe the line of the deep state. That's what that is. That's code for you weren't inculcated to the culture of the deep state. And what we want is restructuring. The will of the people voted for Trump to truncate the agencies, not to play patty cake. All right, let's go to France 24, talking about the escalation in Ukraine.
Launched a drone strike on the Ukrainian city of Sumy overnight, killing at least 2 people and injuring 12 more, according to local authorities. It comes as Russia also fired a new ballistic missile in response to Kyiv's use of US and British longer-range missiles. The Kremlin says the strike on Dnipro was designed to warn the West that it could be used to attack countries supplying military aid to Ukraine. Let's first take a listen to Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov.
Что касается реакции на наш ответ, я так понимаю, Зеленский испугался.
Regarding the reaction to our response, as I understand it, Zelensky got scared. He directly began to accuse his hosts of leaving him unarmed in the face of such an action by Russia. Well, this is probably a useful result, because it allowed at least to be closer to reality. To feel it on your own skin, I would say. As for what to expect from Biden and his outgoing administration, well, attacking supplies and allowing the British and French to use Storm Shadows and Scout missiles, of course, is an act of leaving a bad legacy to the next administration.
Well, let's get the latest now with our correspondent Gulliver Craig, who's standing by for us in Kyiv. Gulliver, are Ukrainians worried about this escalation?
It's funny to hear Lavrov there accusing Volodymyr Zelensky of being scared, because that's one of the words that Volodymyr Zelensky has been using lately to describe the Russians, trying to claim that they're scared. I think in reality it's Ukrainians who are more worried at the moment. I mean, there have been new details coming out about this intermediate range ballistic missile that was tested for the first time yesterday. The Ukrainian military intelligence say that it flew nearly 1,000 kilometers in just 15 minutes, that it had 6 warheads on it, not nuclear warheads, conventional warheads, but 6 of them with 6 submunitions in each of them. So it's a very powerful weapon. The Ukrainians don't have any kind of air defense systems that could shoot such a thing down. This morning, the Ukrainian parliament announced that it was cancelling its session, or at least several MPs from the parliament said that they had been told the session was cancelled for that reason. And so that has made people in Kiev be a bit worried that they might be expecting a strike with a similar missile on the capital. Though later on in the day it turned out apparently that the cabinet had met, not the parliament but the cabinet of ministers, so I guess they weren't that worried. Certainly, though, Ukrainians are more worried than usual and perhaps heeding the air raid sirens a bit more than usual today. But what they're really worried about is this message being sent to the West by Vladimir Putin. They fully understand that testing this missile and the kind of rhetoric coming from the Russians is designed to try to discourage Western allies of Ukraine, such as the United Kingdom and the United States, and also France, from supplying Ukraine with the weapons it needs and giving permission to use those weapons on Russian soil. And for the Ukrainians, that's the biggest risk. They really need to have those authorizations in order to have any chance of surviving in this war.
Now, the situation on the front line remains very desperate for Ukrainians. Does Kyiv believe that the green light by the United States to use, for example, long-range missiles in Russia can turn things around?
I mean, you meet some people who think that it's going to make a big difference, others more, and probably the majority, saying that they think at the moment, with the quantities that have been delivered and the limitations on the permissions that have been given, it will save some Ukrainian soldiers' lives for sure, and so that's a good thing, some civilian lives as well, perhaps not turn the tide. At the moment, things are looking very, very difficult for the Ukrainian armed forces on the front lines in Donbass. Russian forces took yet another village south of Kurakovo in Donetsk region today, a village called Dalnie. They're pretty close to surrounding Kurakovo, which is one of the strategic Ukrainian-held towns in Donetsk region. Some Ukrainian commentators believe that if there were a reorganization of the armed forces with more competent commanders put in charge of more men and an abandonment of the practice that they've had lately of creating new brigades where everyone's new and inexperienced, then they could perhaps turn things around. Because in a sense, given how outgunned and outmanned they are, they're not holding the line too badly. The Russians are advancing, but not that fast. Nevertheless, the personnel problems, perhaps that's the biggest thing really look like something that may prove to be insurmountable for the Ukrainians, that at this stage they simply can't recruit and train enough people to hold the line. The Russians have got a much bigger population pool to draw on and a lot more money. They're paying, $20,000 or $30,000 payouts to anyone who joins the armed forces. The Ukrainians can't possibly offer anything like that to people they're trying to recruit. They just can't afford it.
All right, thank you very much indeed for that update. Gulliver Craig reporting for us there in Kyiv.
All right. Before we go back to Bloomberg, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver. I have it in 2 versions. I have it in the tube version, and I also have it in a dispenser. You use them the same way. They're dual purpose. They can help heal a wound, an abrasion, a minor burn. It can be used as a skincare. Best way to do that is to put it on your skin and let's say right before you go to bed, and then exfoliate in the morning. You'll notice your skin is clearer and tighter, especially around your face. And using it as a means to get through the cold season. Put it on your hands, put it around your mouth, around your eyes, around your nose, around your ears. Lightly coat your nostrils. It'll stay active for 5.5 hours. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver gels. And it's really important. A lot of people can't sleep, on a regular basis. And it's important to have good night's sleep on a regular basis, to be well rested in the morning, to detoxify your central nervous system, and to consolidate memory.
If you are sleep deprived chronically, you will end up having memory loss, and you are going to have higher chances of early onset of dementia, all right? Why? Because you're building up toxins that aren't being filtered out. So it's really important to get a good night's sleep. Take this supplement. It will allow you it will allow you to have a cycle of sleep that will be like about 3 REM cycles and some deep sleep cycles, and that way you're consolidating your memory and you're detoxifying your central nervous system. All right. This has tryptophan and melatonin in it. It has a bunch of other different ingredients. I'm not going to read them, but you can go on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take a look at them. But this is a great way to supplement, to make sure that you're in these REM cycle sleeps. Now, ones that get regular sleep and aren't sleep deprived will slow down the aging process and also improve their immune system. And ones that don't, they look older, their immune system isn't as robust, and you have problems detoxifying your body. So it's really important to take this supplement. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Good Night Formula. Now, talking about detoxing, there are heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals from the food and the water that we drink. All right. Filter your water. I use Zero Water filtration system. Make sure you stop eating processed foods and eat higher quality foods. When you do that, also detoxify your body. Now you need to detoxify your body, the heavy metals, the toxins, and the chemicals. And the way to do that is to take zeolite. Zeolite, you just take 2 drops, small drops underneath your tongue, drink filtered water. And you can take that year round every day. There's some people that only want to detoxify their body once or twice a year. For those people, what you do is you take maybe about 4 or 5 drops, small drops underneath your tongue, drink the filtered water, and do that until the bottle's gone. And do that daily until the bottle's gone. And then do that once or twice a year. It's up to you. But doing it on a regular basis as a maintenance detox is better for you. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. How zeolite works is it's a negatively charged molecule that will attach to positively charged toxins and allow you to urinate them out in about 6 to 8 hours. So please go to my store and get the zeolite. Detoxifying your body is really important, but what's also very important is making sure you drink filtered water and that you eat properly. All right, so that's Bloomberg's on commercial here. All right, what I want to do, this is News Nation talking about the threat to Poland.
Let's get a little more reaction right now from Capitol Hill and News Nation's Joe Khalil. Joe?
Yeah, well, look, this is a serious escalation, as you just heard from Russia, for the first time, threatening directly, not just to hit a target within Ukraine, but to hit a NATO target. We're talking about that base that you all have been discussing in Poland. This is in the northern part of the country, and it's important, a base where offensive weapons are kept. This is purely a defensive base. It was largely brought up by the United States, but again, a NATO base with missile defense capabilities in the case that Russia or, frankly, China or someone else might try to attack a NATO nation. This would be one of the first lines of defense there. And obviously, this isn't happening in a bubble, Adrian. This comes just a day after Vladimir Putin went on TV and announced that new weapon that he says they fired off, this new ballistic missile that has the capability to carry a nuclear weapon on it. Now, there was no nuclear weapon in that attack, but still, the threat is there. The fact that he is now suggesting this is concerning and is an escalation. And it comes as the United States and the UK have now greenlit the Ukrainian ability to launch American and British-made weapons into Russia. So across the board, what you're seeing is concern that this could potentially be an escalation of the conflict more generally. But when the United States hears Vladimir Putin make these kinds of threats, obviously they take it seriously.
Joe, what are we hearing from American officials in response to these threats from Moscow?
Yeah, so interestingly, we've reached out to several senators, several lawmakers, people who were in the defense sphere. We're talking about the Armed Services Committees, Foreign Affairs, Foreign Relations Committees. We've not gotten responses directly from them yet on the threats to the NATO base in Poland, which is a bit surprising to me, at least not yet. But on the other threat, on Russia sending this new weapon, as they say, we did hear the White House commenting on it yesterday. This is Corinne Jean-Pierre from the podium.
The escalation at every turn, at every step, is coming from Russia. They're the ones who are escalating this. They're the ones who started this war. It is because of their aggression into a sovereign territory, Ukraine. And this war can end today. You hear say this over and over again. It can, if Russia would stop the war and stop what they're doing with their aggression.
Hey, Drew, what I found interesting from my perch here on Capitol Hill is Democrats generally are united in supporting Ukraine. Republicans are more split. You've got a fact party that says we spent too much money on Ukraine. You've got another faction that is very pro-Ukraine, and that faction of the party, led in part by Mitch McConnell, has been criticizing the Biden administration for not acting quickly enough. And what he has said is that when we continue to fear Russian escalation, what we are missing is that Russia continues to escalate anyway. So just an interesting perspective, I think, from Mitch McConnell and others to agree with his view on this issue.
All right, Joe Khalil, thank you so much for reporting live for us there from the Hill. Thanks for watching. Go to join and...
Before we go to Cudlow interviewing Ted Cruz, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Soak up those free radicals. It's really important to slow down the aging process and to improve your immune system. You can get C60 on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can get it in extra virgin olive oil, MCT coconut oil, or avocado oil. C60 is a molecule, 60 carbons, that will help to neutralize free radicals, these ROSs. And when you do that, what will happen is less stress will happen in the cell, and the cell's mitochondrial health will improve, and you'll have more ATP, you'll have more energy. You need lots of energy for your neurons, you need lots of energy for your immune system, you need lots of energy just for proper cellular function and tissue function. So if you do this on a regular basis, you're going to start noticing that your tissues are performing better, you're having more energy, and you're slowing down the aging process. So please, go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60. You can get it in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, or an 8-ounce configuration. You should take a teaspoon of it a day. Take a teaspoon a day, every day, get that compound effect. It's a major pillar of my anti-aging protocol. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And a great way to improve your health and slow down the aging process, take Max 35 or Max 14. Take a teaspoon a day, you swish in your mouth, you gargle 30 seconds or so, and then swallow. What will happen is you're neutralizing pathogens, you're improving your oral hygiene, you're maintaining the mucosal barrier that you need, and you are mitigating chance of infection, especially during the cold season. It's a great way to boost up your immune system. Take the Max 35 or the Max 14, go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And lastly, I offer a great toothpaste. This toothpaste is the best toothpaste that you're going to be able to buy. All right? This has structural nanosilver in it, has no fluoride, because fluoride is bad for you. And this will help whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce gum irritation, improve your gum line. And a lot of people don't know, but poor oral hygiene when you get older increases your chances of cardiovascular disease and valvular disease. You don't want that, because when your valves are diseased, you may need a valve replacement. or you'll have prolapses, or you'll have regurgitations, or you'll have stenosis and calcium depositing, and a lot of bad stuff can happen. You don't want that. So with proper supplementation and improving your oral hygiene, you're improving your health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get this toothpaste. It's a structural nano silver toothpaste. It's the best toothpaste that you're going to be able to buy. Way better than anything that Alex Jones sells. Way better. Help support my work, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. All right, what's going on with America's energy renaissance? What's going on? It's not cycling.
So I spoke to the great Senator Ted Cruz of Texas a little bit earlier today, about an hour or so ago. We talked about a whole bunch of issues, including the blue-collar boom in Bitcoin. Take a listen to what he had to say. So we welcome Senator Ted Cruz of Texas back to the show. Senator Cruz, thanks for doing this. We appreciate it.
Larry, always good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So let's have some fun, sir. Let's have some fun. The Dow Jones today is up 600, almost 600 points as of this taping. It's up 2,000 points since the election. People are calling it the Trump trade. Now, even more fun, I think, for you, Bitcoin is moving towards 100,000, okay? So it's at 98,000 and change today. It's up 30% since the election. There's a crypto boom, there's a Trump trade, there's the hope of a blue-collar growth boom. What do you make of it?
So right now, the ETF, or BITO, which is the long version for pro shares for Bitcoin, it's trading at 26.68 right now.
Senator Cruz, put your economic hat on, sir.
Well, it's a return to common sense, and I think it's the market betting on good policies that are going to be coming from a new administration and a Republican Congress. And if you look across the board for economic growth, the two biggest levers that government has for economic growth are tax reform and regulatory reform. We're going to see both. When it comes to tax reform, if God forbid Kamala Harris had won, we would have seen a massive tax increase on job creators, on working families, on the entire economy. Instead, what we're going to see is this Republican Congress working hand in hand with President Trump. We're going to extend the 2017 tax cuts. My hope is we're going to make them bigger and bolder. That is great for economic growth. Secondly, regulatory reform. We have an enormous burden on our economy from government regulations that destroy jobs. And we are seeing now, with leaders being appointed by the president with a commitment to pull the job-killing regulations back, I think we're going to see small businesses take off. And in particular, we are going to see an American energy renaissance. We are going to return to American energy dominance. The war on oil and gas that came from Joe Biden and the Democrats, that ends on January 20th. And I think you're seeing the market react to that in a powerful way.
So as I recall, and I know I'm old and infirm, but as I recall, you're a big crypto advocate.
Yes.
And I want to come back. I mean, this Bitcoin thing is unbelievable. As I say, I mean, the number, it's up $30,000 since $30,000 since the election, 43%. What do you make of that? Where do you think this is coming from?
Well, listen, I am one of the leading defenders of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in the United States Senate. I myself am a Bitcoin investor. Not only that, I'm a Bitcoin miner.
So he benefits from these regulations. But the thing is that how is the Federal Reserve going to abrogate authority? They're not going to give up their authority. There's no way they're going to give up their authority. There'll be a war before that happens. You have a higher chance of nuclear detonation, not just by tactical nukes, but intercontinental nukes, than the Federal Reserve giving up authority to making currency. There's no way that's going to happen. So what's really going on here? And this is why I keep on saying you got to be careful, because there's not an economic fundamental here. All right.
But there is the perception of, it's like a virtual commodity. So as long as there's the perception that there is some value, then it's going to be trading. And just like trading companies that don't have real revenue, they can go up, but they can also crash when people need real liquidity. All right? That means that Bitcoin's going to continue to go up. But when there is a major recession that happens, if there is some major thing that, like major event in the world that happens, I'm not so sure that it will be stable. There's a high probability that it won't be stable and it will lose a lot. So you got to be careful, because there's not the use case, the real world use case isn't there. It's not there because central banks would have to give up authority. That's not going to happen. You will have a nuclear holocaust before central banks give up authority to their currency. So what's really going on with tech?
I own 3 miners that are hashing right now. They're out in West Texas, and it is an incredible thing. Look, the single biggest threat to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency generally is the federal government, and in particular the federal government, radical leftists in government that hate Bitcoin and hate cryptocurrency. Elizabeth Warren hates Bitcoin, and a point I make frequently is that Elizabeth Warren hates Bitcoin for the same reason that communist China hates Bitcoin, because they cannot control it, because it is decentralized. That is the reason I love it. I want it out of government control. I don't want federal bureaucrats having control over it. And I think you're seeing people responding to what's going to be a favorable regulatory environment. I want Texas to be the oasis for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency generally. And we are seeing miners and innovators.
How's this any different than the tulip futures that happened in the 1600s? It's just taken a hell of a lot longer for it to blow up. People back in the 1600s were leveraging their farms and their homes for the futures of sketches of tulips. Now, obviously, the tulip bubble burst, and it took less time for it to burst than, let's say, the crypto thing, but the use case is just not there. You would lose the country's sovereignties. Again, what's the 2 most important things that makes a country a country? Protecting its borders and minting its coin, being able to make its coin. But if it's decentralized, then what's happening is you got digital nomads. You don't have countries. That sounds like world government. It doesn't sound like sovereign nations. So it's dangerous, but it's a virtual commodity. That's what's happening. It's creating an artificial supply dynamic, and there's a big demand that's happening for this supply. But be careful. There's not a real economic use case. Because for it to be really economically viable, the central banks would have to step aside. Why would the central banks do that?
From all over the world coming to Texas to invest and create new jobs when it comes to Bitcoin and crypto.
Well, I would think it's a lot better than having the Federal Reserve. You know, they talk about these central bank digital currencies.
Yes.
So this is like Hayekian currency competition, which I think is probably going to be a great thing.
Amen, hallelujah. I've introduced...
Really? How's this any different than going back to the colonial days of the 1700s and the very, very early 1800s, and the concern of different colonies? All right, well, let's go. All right,
you had colonies that had currencies, and then during the early foundation of the country, there were different currencies that eventually merged into one currency. All right. Now, what date that merger actually happened, I'm not really sure. I'd have to look it up. But the point here is that you don't have a real country if you have a bunch of destabilized currencies. Now, yes, the Federal Reserve, has done some bad things to the economy. I'm not saying that the Federal Reserve is all lily white. They're not. But you want a country to be able to control its currency, not to be decentralized. That doesn't make sense. That does not make sense. In the long run, that is not in the long run for the country. That is not stabilizing. Something's up. Now, in the short run, people can make money doing this. It's going to be, once the digital currency, the digital dollar goes full bore, they're going to have to regulate Bitcoin because it's going to try to circumvent the digital dollar. And the central banks are going to want the control, not giving it up to decentralized cryptocurrencies. And they're going to run it on the backbone. Let Bitcoin become popular. Let Bitcoin become more adopted using blockchain. Run on that platform. Issue the digital dollar, and then start regulating Bitcoin. And then people that were trading at a very high level, right? All of a sudden, let's say the ETF went to 100. It's trading at about 26. But let's say you're trading an ETF and it went to 100 or 300, all right? Then all of a sudden the regulation starts to come in and it drops down to 30. You lost a lot. You lost a lot. And because it's not coming back. So this thing's going to keep on inching up and 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 up. And then more and more people will buy in. And then all of a sudden, I think that once the digital dollar goes full bore and there's no more physical currency, the regulation starts, and then there's going to be this precipitous drop of Bitcoin. That's what I think is going to happen. But, I've been surprised, I've been, somewhat wrong on this upward trend. I'm a little, there's a fever, some sort of fever pitch that's going on with Bitcoin that I don't think is healthy.
Legislation to ban the Fed or the federal government from creating a central bank digital currency. I think a CBDC would be a disaster. And you're right that it is, Hayek, I'm sure, is smiling right now at the competition. And look, Bitcoin is often referred to as digital gold. One of the reasons people go to Bitcoin and crypto is that they don't have faith in politicians who spend like drunken sick.
But they'll have faith in a politician that put money into a Bitcoin miner and put money into, purchasing Bitcoin and trying to deregulate it so he can get wealthy. Now you wonder why people don't trust politicians.
Who debase the currency, and so it's an inflation hedge among other things. And I think you're seeing that's drawing a lot of people there, and it is. I think the future is very, very bright.
Can I just raise one point that's bothering me?
But gold is physical. You go in the ground and you dig it up. Now, Bitcoin, you have to mine, and it's off of an algorithm, and it creates a coin. But it's monopoly. Literally, you can convince people that printing monopoly money only on a special type of printing press and using that as some sort of crypto monopoly money. And as long as you have enough people buying into the idea, you got crypto. Monopoly money and crypto is no different. From an economic foundation, and there's the problem, it's a virtual, there is created a virtual, virtual supply and demand dynamic.
Last couple of shows we've talked about it regarding the central bank, the Federal Reserve. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a poll that was taken, or I'm sorry, not a poll. Federal Election Commission, and actually Semaphore first put this out. It's a left of center site, as you probably know. But here's the thing. In the last two presidential cycles, 2020 and 2024, get this, 92% of the Federal Reserve Board donations to the campaigns went to Democrats. 92% of the Federal Reserve Board staff donations went to Democrats. This is new, Senator. This was not true in the early decades. This was not true during the Bush years. It wasn't even true during the Obama years. It kind of started in 2016, and then it explodes in 2020, and it keeps on exploding in 2024. Well, I mean, the Fed says it's independent, but if 92% are given to Democrats, how independent is the Fed? And might somebody want to look into that?
Yeah, look, that is certainly concerning. I hadn't seen that particular report, but you know, I will say, you know, that there are certainly Democrat governors, and that's not
Maybe he should be
surprising.
looking at that report and worrying about how federal employees are donating to the Democrats, and stop worrying about decentralizing cryptocurrencies. Meanwhile, that's how he's going to get wealthy. Yeah, let's trust the politicians.
Democrats, but particularly when Donald Trump came in, I think there were a lot of establishment Republicans who Trump scared the hell out of them, and Trump is a disruptor. You went and worked in the Trump White House, but coming out of the world of Wall Street, that took real courage, Larry, for you to do that. As you know, a lot of people, Trump scared the living daylights out of it, so I think that's one of the factors driving it. It will be interesting to see how much that changes during the second term, because I do think a lot of the things that seem revolutionary and even to some people scary in a first Trump term, after 4 years of Biden and Harris, people are ready to end the madness and get back to common sense. And I'm hopeful, you know, when you combine it with where we started this discussion, talking about efforts to rein in government regulations, to have more sensible taxes, I think people are going to see real economic benefits to job creation, real economic benefits to their family's bottom line, and that may change the overall assessment. We just saw an election on election day where Donald Trump won the popular vote by millions of votes. Of all 7 battleground states, he won all 7 decisively. We have a Republican House, we have a Republican Senate, 53 Republican senators. My race, as you know, I was running for re-election in Texas. I won by 9 points, by 1 million votes statewide. And one of the things I'm most proud of, I won in Texas the Hispanic vote statewide by 6 points. And we saw South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley, which has been a bright...
How many people that were pro-crypto decided to vote for you, Ted?
Bastion for 100 years flip red. That is an historic and generational change, and I think it gives President Trump and the Republicans in the Senate and House a real mandate to deliver on our promises.
Okay, yeah, by the way, congrats on that election. Two things quickly, Senator, two other things quickly. In view of this working class coalition, and I call it the potential blue collar boom, but things that you're talking about, you know, the Hispanic vote, the black vote, young people voting, middle income blue collars, wouldn't it be wise to take up the tax cuts and the tax reform right away, first on the agenda? It doesn't have to be the only thing, but you're going to slog through this. Wouldn't it be wise to go tax cuts first?
Look, I think it is going to be the central and biggest legislative priority next year. As you know, I am going to be the incoming chairman of the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. Commerce Committee has jurisdiction over about 40% of the U.S. economy. If you care about jobs, there are very few positions in Washington with a greater impact on job creation. I can tell you last week, I already sat down with the new Republican Senate Majority Leader and with all of the incoming committee chairs, and our entire discussion was about moving forward quickly with the tax cut, using it to bring in regulatory reform at the same time, thinking big and bold to make a real difference. I think that is absolutely a priority, and I think we're going to hit the ground running.
All right, well, that's great. Last one. Deportation of criminals, deportation of possible terrorists, and illegals and so forth. You've got all these liberal sanctuary cities, mayors and governors, and they're all standing up and they're going to fight Trump and defend illegal immigrants. Now, you tell me, you're a scholar, you're a legal scholar, constitutional scholar. I'm not. I didn't go to law school. I'm not a lawyer, but I thought federal law beats local law, point number one. And point number two, there are any number of statutes that will allow ICE to come in and identify these criminals and deport them. I mean, this is getting to be an out-of-hand discussion, but it seems to me the law, the federal law, overrides the local law.
Look, that's unquestionably right under the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution. Federal law preempts state law. But more fundamentally, look, what's happened to the Democrats in the past few years is they've gotten radical and extreme on the border. Under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, we saw an open border, 12 million illegal immigrants invading this country, the worst illegal immigration in our nation's history. That is going to end, and it's going to end on January 20th. And we're going to secure the border, and it's not going to take a year. It's not going to take 6 months. I believe we will do it in January and February of next year. And you are right that you have blue state governors and mayors that they're acting like Bull Connor. They're just engaged in open defiance. They looked at Election Day and they didn't hear a word from the American people. They still embrace open borders, and they still don't care about releasing murderers and rapists and child molesters that jeopardize the safety of everyone's families. Now, the good news, as you said, is federal law enforcement has the authority to go in and arrest the criminals, even if Gavin Newsom decides that he wants to bear hug every murderer in California. That's not going to stop federal agents from arresting criminals and deporting criminals.
Don't you think I'm pretty
So
good?
let me
I
get
never
this
went to
straight.
law school.
Let me get this straight with Ted Cruz. All right, he wants to get rid of the illegal immigrants, but he wants to make sure that crypto is unregulated and it just goes, sky high. To have a country, you got to control your borders and your currency, Ted. All right.
I'm not a lawyer. My grasp of the Constitution.
You've got, Larry, have you thought about becoming Attorney General?
I'm going to have to say.
All right. This is going to be the end of my transmission. For the ones that did participate in listening on X, thank you very much. The next time I do this and you're listening on X, you can just raise your hand and I'll take your calls. But we're going to end the transmission now. This was experimental, so there was a little bit of a hiccup to it, but going forward, there's going to be a live stream on the large channel, and on the smaller channel on YouTube, there will be a live stream with the dashboard showing the actual market, showing oil, the equity market, the currency market, and some of the news that's popping up through the Dow Jones. So, hopefully, things weren't too bad with this experimental live stream on 2 channels with the dashboard. And the ones that have participated in the chat and listening, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. Please help support my work by making sure you subscribe to the 4 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. The links are in the description of the videos. Also, if you can, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video, and take a look at the supplements that I offer and listen to my advice and follow the protocols to boost up your health. It works. It's something that I do every day. Thank you for listening.